A very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Mike Brown.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We've got a bumper political show today. I want to ask the questions you want to ask to the politicians from which you want the answers. Christine Jardine's coming in a moment. She is a Liberal Democrat. What does she think of IDs? Also, Ed Davey this week couldn't say that he thinks that people who have penises aren't women. This is a big, big problem for the Liberal Democrats. Also, why does he need a marching band? Why can't he just say some policies that, I don't know, might resonate with the public? We'll be talking to the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid, in a few minutes as well. He is on the show. He will give us answers to many, many questions involving Islamophobia, for example, the definition of that. What's that going to be? Digital IDs, the big story of the last few days. What are they actually going to do? What's going to happen if people don't want digital IDs? What are the sanctions that are there? Loads of questions coming into this building, and if you want to ask a question of the Housing Secretary, or indeed the Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, Sir James Cleverly, I want you to contact me right now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on that number as well. There's loads to talk about today. Starmer is low in the polls. He's one of the most unpopular prime ministers we've ever had. He is locked in a land deal as well. There are questions about that the Sunday Times is asking. Loads to discuss this morning. Let me know your thoughts. Let's get your thoughts on the air between now and 1 o'clock. 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss here on Talk. Well, digital IDs and whether they should be introduced or not has been dominating the discussion here on Talk for the last 4 days since it was announced from the government. I just want to remind you what the Prime Minister has been saying about it in stark terms about the fact that you can't work unless you have one of these digital IDs that are going to be introduced. This is what the Prime Minister said on Friday.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Christine Jardine is the Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. She's a member of the Women and Equalities Committee, and we'll come on to some women's issues in a minute. Christine, good morning. Thank you for your time this morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. If we could, just before we start, if I could say, this has been a very sad weekend for not just Liberal Democrats, but everybody involved in politics when we lost Ming Campbell, who was a giant of liberalism in this country and someone that since I was at university I've admired hugely. He was a man, a decent man, a gentleman, and always kind to everyone he came across.
Have we lost that decency in politics, Christine?
I hope not. I hope there's still some of us who think that it's important that we disagree well, and that it's important that we respect other people's opinions, whatever they might be, that we respect their right to have them, and we don't just decry them, call them stupid, or make them feel less worthy because we don't agree with them.
Well, let's disagree without being disagreeable. I have a feeling we might do that over the next 10 or 15 minutes, Christine. You never know. Tell me your thoughts on digital ID.
I think it's unnecessary, it's an intrusion, and it's a breach of people's civil liberties. I don't want my data in one place. on one card, available to be hacked into. We see everything being hacked into. We see the problems that Jaguar Land Rover have got at the moment. We saw what happened at Heathrow Airport, Marks and Spencer, all these big operations. They can't make digital completely secure. So it's wrong. But it's a breach of people's personal liberty.
Why is it a breach of people's personal liberty, Christine, when so many people are putting that information into forums online all the time? As you correctly pointed out there, Jaguar Land Rover, Marks and Spencer, I mean, this kind of, not exactly this information, but a lot of this information is in the public, almost in the public domain already, or easily hackable. Clearly people have surrendered at least some form of their privacy as the internet develops.
Through choice. You can give people information if you want, but to demand that the government has that information and that the government, it's also a nonsense when Kier Starmer says that you won't be able to work without a digital ID card. You shouldn't be able to work without a national insurance number. It's, you know, it's there already. You know, if you have a national insurance number and you pay national insurance and you pay income tax, then you should be able to work. That is there. We don't need digital ID cards. It's a step too far for me, and I don't understand why we don't just make the current system work. And the other thing is, the problem with the black economy is that people will still be able to go into it and be paid cash in hand and avoid any need for a digital ID. So it won't work. It's unnecessary. It will be incredibly expensive. And it's a breach of people's civil liberties. I think my inbox is already full of people complaining about
what are the Liberal Democrats going to do about this? How are you going to bring it up in Parliament? We've seen that the petition, for example, has now crossed 2 million signatures.
Well, there is a mechanism, of course, when a petition reaches that stage, that it will be debated in Parliament. But we will be bringing it up at every possible opportunity. We'll be putting questions to the Home Office. We'll be challenging it. And you know, when it comes up in legislation, we'll be voting against it. And frankly, I think the Labour Party might find that not only are the opposition united against it, but there's quite a lot of people in their own benches who are not keen on the idea. They tried this before. They tried it back in Tony Blair's government, and it didn't work. People didn't like the idea. They didn't want it. That won't have changed simply by putting the word digital in front of ID cards.
Let's talk about another form of civil liberties, the freedom to offend. We have, I think, quite spirited, but hopefully not offensive conversations. There was a man called Pete North who retweeted a meme and was arrested for it. I just want to put that meme on the screen now, obviously with the F word blurred out there. He put F Palestine, F Hamas, F Islam, want to protest, F off to a Muslim country and protest on the background of a Palestinian flag. He was arrested for that. Should he have been, Christine?
Well, we have to be very careful about freedom of speech and that we protect it, and that freedom of speech shouldn't just be for the people that you agree with. It has to be with the people that you don't agree with. When it crosses a line, though, is when it causes harm by inflaming public opinion, leading to unrest, or inciting unrest, rather, the sort of thing that we saw Elon Musk say on X. That's the sort of thing that should be arrested. Now, you
think Elon Musk should have been arrested?
You have the advantage over me, Peter. I don't know the exact details of where, when, how, the context.
But in regard to Elon Musk, do you think he should have been arrested for what he said?
Well, Elon Musk is a very powerful individual who uses that power. And I think there are times where he crosses the line. And our leader, Ed Davey, has said that he thinks that some of the things that he has said on Twitter are not legal and are inciting people to violence. And that is wrong, whoever you are.
So if Elon Musk comes to the UK, do you think he should be arrested?
If he incites violence, yes.
Let's talk about something. Okay, sorry, finish your point.
I was going to say, if he incites violence, anyone who comes to the UK should be subject to UK law. I think you would agree with that. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from in the world. If you break our laws, then you should be punished just like anybody else. So you should be arrested. If Elon Musk comes to this country and incites violence, then he should be subject to the same laws as everybody else.
What is Islamophobia to you?
Well, Islamophobia is something that we need a very, very clear definition of. We have a clear definition of anti-Semitism. We have clear definitions of racism. But what we do need is a clear definition of Islamophobia, because that meme you just showed, that's unacceptable to say that sort of thing in public. We really need to clamp down on that, because that is inciting.
So the meme we just showed there that the person was arrested for, you think that's incitement? Do you?
I think that it was. Unfortunately, we don't have a precise definition yet of Islamophobia, and I think we need to get one, because we need to be able to say quite clearly when something like that is said, that it crosses a line and where the line is.
Do you think that meme crossed the line? Do you think that meme crossed the line?
I think that meme crossed a very, very... There's a difference between saying something which is simply people might say, oh, that's not very nice, and something which is deeply offensive and racist. I was in Liverpool recently and visited the mosque, and a woman there who was born and brought up in this country, I had the broadest Scouse accent I've heard in years, as a Muslim, was afraid to go out in the streets at times because of the things that people were saying, the abuse that she is facing.
So why? I'm really sorry to hear that woman went through that. I wouldn't want anyone to go through that. But can I just ask? Should people be arrested for retweeting memes like this? Because if it crosses a line, well, what happens when that line is crossed?
If it's abusive, then it's not acceptable. And we have laws in this country which set out quite clearly what is abuse. And if you break that law, if you cross that line, then you should be arrested.
How does it cross the line? If it's something is abusive, if I throw an insult at you, it doesn't mean I'm inciting someone to hurt you in some way. If you're simply saying F off to a Muslim country and protest, I don't think that's a nice thing. I wouldn't retweet it myself, Christine. It wouldn't be something that I agree with. No, but at what point do we say, actually, this is free speech, and these are people simply disagreeing with something and being maybe even offensive about it, but actually crosses a line? Like, where do you see that line?
My personal view here is that I would find that abusive. But what you're asking me to do is comment on an arrest. Now, that's an active legal case.
No, it's not. No, it's not, because they haven't charged him.
He's been arrested. Therefore, I do not feel it is acceptable to comment.
Well, you can. You're very welcome to do so, and there will be zero legal sanction. There'll be zero legal sanction if you do. Right then.
I'm very welcome to do so, but I used to teach law for journalists, and I know that you don't say anything about active legal cases.
It's not an active legal case because he hasn't been charged. He's been arrested but not charged. Christine, he has been arrested but not charged. There are no active legal proceedings.
In Scotland, when you're arrested, it becomes an active case.
Okay. I'm in London. Okay, Christine.
I'm on the second, Peter. He may well be charged. He may well be charged.
He's not going to be charged. He's not going to be charged in London, and you could say what you want. You could say what you want, Christine, on that, and you know that. Okay, all right, fair enough. I want to ask you about Ed Davey. Let me play a clip of what he said to Piers Morgan earlier this week.
May 2023, you told LBC that women quite clearly can have a penis.
Well, actually, I didn't say that.
What did you say?
I was responding to a question, and what I actually said was that the vast majority of people identify with the same gender they had at birth, but there are a few who don't. And for over
do you believe, for the record, do you believe women can have a penis?
For over 20 years, we've had a Gender Recognition Act which has said that people who want to change their gender can do so. The vast majority of people, as you know, Piers, have the same gender.
But I don't think
the biological.
I don't believe that any women can have a penis. You seem to think that some can.
Well, I go back to what the law says. The law is really clear. It's one of the reasons why when the Supreme Court made its ruling, which some people didn't like, I said we accept that ruling.
Christine, can you just answer the question really, really simply? Can women have a penis?
What I find offensive, you were just talking about offence and abuse, and what I find offensive is this obsession in this country at the moment with not just letting people live their lives as long as they're not doing any harm. And I find this line of questioning is a bit kind of trying to ramp up an argument. And we live in we're living in a very tense time. And the more we have debates that try to ramp up the tension or try to...
Should we not debate it? Should we not? Should you, as a member of the Women and Equalities Committee of the House of Commons, not have an opinion on what a woman is? Well, what is your opinion?
The thing is that what I object to is it being oversimplified and turned into an argument about whether a woman has a penis. What we have in this country is a situation that we've had for 20 years where we could have, you know, a lot of people, as Ed said, the majority of people are born with a gender and a sex that they are comfortable with and they live with throughout their lives. But there are people who are born who feel that their gender is somehow wrong.
And all of that's fine. All of that's fine and all of that's correct, Christine.
Let me finish. If you let me finish, you might actually hear what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is that there are also people who genetically and medically are born with two sets of genitalia or indistinct gender. So to make it simple, to try and make a simple political point that just is getting at people and making them feel, trying to make them feel in some way inadequate.
Do you not think?
Persecuted. For me,
okay. Christine, you've spoken for about 2.5 minutes now, and I just want to ask you: do you not think it's reasonable for me to ask you, as a member of the Women and Equalities Committee of the House of Commons, what a woman is? Because you're essentially saying, I think, and I might be wrong here, and tell me if I'm wrong, to even have the debate and to even ask that question is something that shouldn't happen. And the thing is that there are clear implications. I don't want anybody to have a difficult life. I don't want anybody to have a horrible time. I don't want anybody to face discrimination. I know trans people. I know that they often have had a difficult path in life. Not all of them, but many of them have. And the point is that if you don't know what the definition is, and if we don't know, and if we don't accept perhaps what the Supreme Court has said, which is in law and has changed over the last 20 years, well then we can't make law and we can't keep everybody safe. And I think it's a reasonable debate.
I didn't say it wasn't a reasonable debate. I said that specific question oversimplified it. That's what I said. I don't think it's an unreasonable debate. I think it's reasonable to make sure that everyone's rights in this country are protected. And actually what the Supreme Court said was that their ruling should not in any way undermine the rights of the trans community. They did not want to see that happen. And the confusion and the fear which has come about is not directly as a result of the way of the Supreme Court, which I respect and I accept their ruling. It's the way it is being interpreted. They said, what they said is actually there's an internal logic to it, that some people are biologically women, like I am, and there are other people who, through their lives, choose to opt to transition into women. Now, okay, that's fine. They made that definition, they made that difference, and we all accept that that is the ruling of the Supreme Court. But to simplify it down to, can a woman have a penis, just to me misses the point that we are trying to make life easy or comfortable for everyone in society, to make everyone feel valued.
But some would say, just as a final question, Christine, some would say that actually that doesn't make life easy or simple for people. That makes life far more complicated because there isn't a clarity here.
There is a clarity if you accept people for who they are. And that is not a problem. If you accept people for who they are, then it's absolutely clear. That doesn't mean that you have to change who you are. It just means that you accept people for who they are and that they are free to be who they want to be. As long as it doesn't affect your life, they don't break any laws, they don't offend us.
But it does affect lives, doesn't it? You know, if you go into, for example, a women's changing room or a women's bathroom and there's someone there who is biologically male, who has transitioned in whatever way to become a woman, that does affect people, doesn't
it? For 20 years, there have been, it has been acceptable for trans women and trans men to use the appropriate, what they felt was the appropriate facilities. I completely accept that there are women who are not comfortable with having trans women in facilities. But what I would ask them is, would they prefer that they had trans men in those facilities? It's not as simple as we don't want trans women in women's changing rooms or toilets. We have to look at this sensibly. We have to come up with a solution that suits everyone. I spent a year coming up with a Liberal Democrat policy that tries to deal with this. We have to accept that people are different, that there are concerns on all sides, that there are women who have genuine concerns about everyone in gender neutral toilets, for example. But we have to address the issue logically, and we have to take into account people's concerns, and we have to make sure that everyone feels valued, and that we don't make anyone feel lesser in society. And I fear that over the last few years, that is exactly what we've done.
Christine, as always, thank you. Christine Jardine there, the Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. She's a member of the Women and Equalities Committee. What do you think of what she said there? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Mark in Southampton's been in touch and says, wow, Peter, Jardine is shocking. Tried to hide behind the legal argument, then afraid to say that a woman can't have a penis. What a disgrace, says Mark. Elsa says, Christine Jardine is wrong. Free speech is free speech. How dare she suggest Muslims should have special consideration with regard to free speech? They have no right not to be offended. If they don't like our values, they're absolutely free to go somewhere with no free speech. The UK has been changed forever by Islam. Free speech is absolutely non-negotiable. Steve says, Christine Jardine showing off again that word salad is her only defence of any topic, just like Ed Davey. Great show, Peter. Thanks for not letting these people off the hook for non-answers. David says, Christine says that if anyone coming to the UK has committed an offence, should be arrested. So why are all the people illegally crossing the channel not arrested? After all, they are breaking the law. Lots more to come on this. We'll go to the debate desk next here on Talk.
Meghan Markle is quaking in her boots at the terrifying prospect of a tell-all book. The difficult Duchess suddenly severed all ties with Canadian Jessica Mulroney after the celebrity stylist was accused of white privilege in a race row over her failure to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Jessica is reported to have been offered a $1 million deal to write the story of her life and times with Prince Harry's social climbing American wife.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Brian, who says, in Hayes, who says, I was always a bit of a lefty, but I've recently transitioned into a far-right thug. I've never heard any pro-diversity, I've never heard any pro-diversity, everyone is equal. Lib Dems politicians treat the far right as people to respect and listen to. Pete says Islamophobia surely means a fear of Islam. It seems to be misunderstood as hatred of Islam. I fear radical Islam as a threat to our Western way of life. I don't hate individuals who follow this misguided religion. The last thing we should have is any law that protects anyone from being offended. Well, I am going to ask Steve Reid about that, the Housing Secretary. He's also the Community Secretary. I'll talk to him in a few minutes' time. On digital ID, which is the big story, so many people have been in touch on this over the last 4 days. Bill says, digital ID, how much will it cost? Where are they getting the money from? It's just a deflection. Great show, says Bill. Well, let's go to the debate desk. Marley Morris is with us, returning Associate Director of Migration, Trade and Communities at IPPR. Lots to ask you this morning, Marley. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Jack Sellers joins us for the first time. Jack is a former advisor to Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Jack, good to have you in the studio.
Morning.
Digital ID, what do you think?
I've got to admit, I'm actually, I'm not in the sort of typical camp of a, conservative right-winger, which, there's a lot of clampdown at the moment on free speech. What does this mean for not free speech, sorry, sort of infringement on your sort of, your freedoms and the like. I mean, my initial take on this, take a step back, is that, is this really something which Starmer fighting for his political life right now, heading into the Labour conference, is this something he really thinks is going to change the dial? I mean, if I was his MPs at the moment, I'd be thinking, God, isn't there anything a bit bigger, a bit chunkier, which is going to be a bit more red meat for our members and for our voters, which is going to get them going? I think
is it just a distraction? Because we're dealing, there's another potential scandal in the Sunday Times today in regard to a land deal. And I suppose my question would be, if Angela Rayner had to resign over taxes that weren't paid over land, should Kier Starmer? And actually, maybe that's a bigger story.
Yeah, distraction actually could be a good way of putting it, because it's obviously caused debate. All the other parties have come out against it. The Scottish National Party have come out against it. There's debates across the board. It definitely could be a distraction. I saw Starmer try to answer the land question this morning on Laura Kay, where he said something about how his parents love donkeys, so he bought them a bit of land so they can get access to the donkeys, which is all very
all fine, but was he obeying the law? Marley, on digital ID, where do you stand?
So I think there can be benefits to digital ID. We've seen, for instance, in Estonia, really effective ways to link up different public services and make it life easier for citizens in the country. And
they still have a problem with migration, though, don't they?
Yeah, so the focus has been on tackling migration. I'm less convinced that digital ID is going to be a game changer there, because we already have various right-to-work checks in the UK that require employers to ensure that people are working here legally. So I'm not sure if that's actually the key thing that digital ID will
But that's what
change.
The government says it will be, though. Should they not implement it because that's not what it's actually going to do, in your opinion?
I think they've said a bit of both. There has been, in the press release, there was talk, for instance, of other countries like Australia and Estonia, how you link up those services more effectively. I would actually major more on that, because I think that's actually where the real benefits for people in this country will be.
Tell me about those benefits, because a lot of our viewers and listeners really sceptical. I'm sceptical too. I'm not sure I want all that information in one place, especially when we have a Ministry of Defence that emailed the Taliban twice.
Yeah, absolutely. There are risks, but it is quite common in other countries to have some kind of ID system, and more they're moving to this digital ID policy. And the idea is just that basically, rather than having lots of different accounts with the government for different benefit services, for other public services, for childcare, you actually link it all together into one account, and that just makes it easier for people to navigate different services.
Can you see merit in what Marley is saying there, or are you sceptical about this, Jack?
No, I am sceptical. I'm not sceptical necessarily for the reasons you point out. In terms of data and government having access to all this data, I'm just, government has access to all this data in any way, in different ways, different formats, it's all there, right? My sort of scepticism is to, what is the point in this? What is it going to achieve? How much is it going to cost? And if they can't explain those things, as Tony Blair obviously failed to 20 years ago, whatever it was, then why the hell are we doing it?
Yeah. Listen, we'll return to this debate. I'm going to ask Steve Reid about it in a few minutes' time. He is the Housing Secretary. Lots of people in touch about this, including Mick in Wallington, who says about Christine Jardine, who we spoke to, the Liberal Democrat MP there, has store loyalty cards in her handbag. Did she give permission for them to hoover up her data every time she shops? We're asking the question about whether digital ID can solve the illegal migration problem. That's a question I want to put to Steve Reid. We'll be back in the debate desk in a couple of minutes with a number of other topics, including whether footballers saying "come on lads" is offensive. Yes, really. Britain 2025. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Steve Reid is with us in just a second. He's getting mic'd up at the moment. Let me read a couple more messages, including from a person who says they will never be able to make decisions for the interests of the UK. On digital IDs, David says the petition against the introduction of digital ID cards now stands at over 2.15 million. It's going much higher. Given those people who've signed the petition, probably a fraction of those who are actually against its introduction, it's likely that a large majority of the population are against it. Is this Labour's poll tax moment? Will we see civil disobedience on an unprecedented scale? Says David. Well, certainly that petition is high. It's over 2 million. We'll talk to the Housing and Community Secretary, Steve Reid, right now. Steve, good morning. Welcome to the programme.
Good. Hello, Peter. Good to be with you.
Great. You can chat to us this morning. How will digital IDs stop illegal immigration?
Well, the country, we know from what people tell you on the doorsteps in the streets, wants to tackle the level of illegal immigration that we've got coming in. And one of the things that makes this country more attractive for illegal migrants to head for, compared to places like Europe, France, Germany that they're passing through, is they have ID that makes it tougher to get a job. We don't, which makes it easier to disappear into the economy, get employment and stay here. And we have to get rid of some of those pull factors that make this the destination that too many people are choosing to come to because it's possible to come here and make a living. So digital ID is a check that you would have to show, much harder to forge than just showing a letter or a bill, much harder to forge, to stop people who should not be working from being able to work, but it also allows the authorities to collect data on particular employers or places of employment, so that those employers who are choosing to recruit people who are here illegally can be identified and then enforcement carried out against them. So for all of those reasons, it helps It helps us tackle illegal immigration.
Doesn't that all happen basically already? You've got to check national insurance numbers. You've got to, for example, I took on a bit of extra work recently. I had to show my passport, for example. Right to work is a big issue as well, and those checks have to be made. I just wonder what's new about this. And some of those countries you mentioned there, Germany, for example, they may have digital ID, but they still have a problem with immigration and illegal immigration.
Well, yeah, if you look at a country like France, for instance, it's much harder for an illegal migrant to get work in France than it is in the UK. And the French authorities complain bitterly that one of the reasons they've got so many migrants in Calais, who they don't want to be there either, is because they're heading to the UK because it's so easy to get work, and they're not staying in France because it's harder to get work. So if there is something we can do to tackle this problem and help reduce the levels of illegal migration that so anger the British public, then quite frankly this government should be doing it.
Gordon Brown in 2009, you reacted to a speech that he had saying no ID cards, good stuff. Should we believe Steve Reid in 2009 or Steve Reid in 2025?
Well, 2009 was a long time ago.
So you've changed your mind, have you?
Well, we didn't used to carry digital ID then, did we? Now all of us have got loads of digital ID. The whole situation has changed since back then.
So you've changed your mind?
The previous Labour government looked at ID and well, the whole country has changed their mind. Back then, you didn't have anything like... all of us carry digital ID now. Back then, most of us probably didn't. So, given that we've all got digital ID, given that it can help tackle one of the biggest problems that the country faces, then yes, you should change your mind. When the facts change, I changed my mind. I don't know what you do, but I think that's the right and rational thing to do. If digital ID can help us stop illegal employment and help us curb illegal migration into this country, then yes, I think it's something we should embrace.
Kier Starmer has said that you will not be able to work in the United Kingdom unless you have this digital ID, unless you have what has been called a Brit card. For the tens of thousands of people who cross the Irish border into Northern Ireland every day to work often in healthcare and caring professions, or the hundreds of thousands of people in Northern Ireland who consider themselves Irish, will they have to have a Brit card? And if they don't, will they not be allowed to work?
Well, Northern Ireland is very often in a very different situation because of the issue with the agreement with the European Union, because they can operate both in the single market of the EU and the single market of the United Kingdom. So there will be a need to sit down and work with all of the parties in Northern Ireland.
All of whom have said they're against this. All of them.
Well, I mean, we will have to work out something that will work for Northern Ireland as well.
So you haven't thought about this yet? You haven't thought about a whole part of the UK when it comes to a flagship policy?
It was announced by the government on Friday. Today is only Sunday.
Why didn't you think about it beforehand?
I'm going to be making a big announcement about building new towns. What will happen is there will be a consultation. This isn't a fully formed policy with every I dotted and every
Why are
T
you announcing
crossed.
policies that aren't fully formed?
Because that's the way it is always done. You announce white papers, you consult on them, people give their feedback, and then you come forward with a policy. There is not a single government policy ever that has been implemented in any different way, and we're doing exactly the same with ID cards as we would do with reforming any other law.
Let's talk about housing, for which you are the Secretary of State. These 300,000 extra homes, is that in addition to the 1.5 million you've pledged by the end of the Parliament?
It would be part of it. So
they're not new homes.
Is because they're, of course they're new homes.
Well, they're new homes, but they're not addition. They're not in addition. They're not in addition to the 1.5 million. How many have you built so far this year?
No. Well, you won't over 200,000. But you won't let him get my answer in. What I was going to say is we've committed to building 1.5 million during this Parliament. The homes that will come from the new towns will go, some of that maybe within the 1.5 million, but some of it will go above and beyond the 1.5 million. What we've agreed to do is, for the first time since the Second World War, is develop and progress a new generation of new towns up and down this country. That will create probably around 300,000 new homes. We want 3 of those new towns to be under construction within this Parliament, but we'll progress the rest of them as well. That is in addition to, or within, part of the 1.5 million. And what we're doing about that is we've got a new law going through Parliament now called the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is going to speed up the planning laws, so it's much quicker from when you get an application in for building some homes to getting spades in the ground, so that we can end the housing crisis that has seen homelessness and temporary accommodation double under the previous government, and so many young people locked out of the dream of home ownership because owning a home has become unaffordable. We have to build homes if we're going to tackle that crisis.
Okay, you're the Housing Secretary, you're also the Community Secretary. What is Islamophobia, and would you veto a definition if you don't agree with it? What is Islamophobia to you? What should be illegal?
Islamophobia is abuse against Muslim communities simply because they are Muslim. But let me give you this assurance, because I'm aware of this debate. Free speech will always be paramount. There will be no blasphemy law by the back door under any circumstances or at any point. Nobody has the right not to be offended, but communities have the right to be protected against unfair and aggressive abuse. So a definition of it that fits what I just said is something I think we could talk about with other parties who will want to also have their say, but there will be no blasphemy law by the back door.
Okay.
We don't have them in this country. There will be no restrictions on free speech, because free speech is fundamental to what this country is.
We had an arrest in the last few days of a man called Pete North, who retweeted a meme which said various things that I wouldn't retweet, Steve. I expect you wouldn't either, but nonetheless, I wonder whether you think this is his free speech and whether he should have been arrested. F Palestine, F Hamas, F Islam, F off to Muslim countries and protest if you want to protest. I don't think that's a nice thing. It was on a Palestinian flag, but should he have been arrested for retweeting something?
Well, it's very hard for me to comment on something that I haven't seen and don't know. I don't know whether there are other things that he's done behind that. So it would be very foolish as a government minister to stand up here and pronounce that particular case. But I believe in free speech completely. And I think people should be free to say what they like. And if some people are offended by it, well, I'm afraid that goes with free speech. What you can't do is target minority groups with hate, target anybody with hate, or incite violence. So I don't know what he did. So I can't comment on that.
Okay, I totally get that. Dan has been in touch, one of our viewers and listeners, who says Kier Starmer suggested this morning that Reform UK are a racist party. So I'd like to ask Steve Reid if the Prime Minister was calling Reform UK voters racist, because looking at the polls, that's a lot of people in the country. What would you say to Dan?
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister wasn't saying, and nor would I, that people who are thinking of voting for Reform UK are racist. I do not think they are. Reform UK's leadership have been proposing some policies which look pretty racist to me, but they've also proposed privatising the health service, so you have to pay to see your GP. I suspect a lot of people thinking of voting Reform wouldn't agree with that. We also had Farage in the United States, in Congress, pleading with the United States to put sanctions on British workers to get rid of their jobs. I suspect a lot of Reform UK voters or people who are thinking of Reform wouldn't agree that their job should be scrapped by US sanctions that Nigel Farage has begged for. Doesn't strike me as very patriotic. So the fact that they've got a leadership that seems out of touch and incompetent and sometimes racist doesn't mean that the voters are racist.
Steve, thank you very much. That is Steve Reid there, who is the Housing Secretary. Thanks for joining us on Talk. Appreciate your time. Let's get there are many more questions, but we ran out of time there, unfortunately. Marley Morris and Jack Sellers are with us. Marley, what did you make of what he had to say there?
Yeah, I mean, clearly there are big ambitions on housing. There's the 1.5 million target. There's the announcement on new towns in the last couple of days. I think the government's clearly getting on with some really ambitious proposals. It's going to take time, and it's clear that people are frustrated and that they want to move faster. But it's a stretching target, and they've got to the end of the Parliament to reach it. So I mean, it feels like the ambition's right. They're working on planning reform, as Steve Reid was saying, which I think will be essential to meet this target. But I think it's the right level of ambition.
Jack?
I think they're clutching at straws. At the moment, look, we're a year in. Right? These are the sorts of things, the housing, the towns. These are the sorts of things a government would announce sort of mid-term in their parliament when they might be a little bit unpopular, but they're sitting there, they're just getting on with the job. They're delivering these long-term things. But that is not the situation Kier Starmer sort of finds himself in right now. He is under serious political threat going into this Labour conference. Reform down his neck, Andy Burnham down his neck. I think personally that is his members in the party conference who are going to be looking for some vision, looking for some answers. I think they're going to be disappointed.
Will they get that vision, Marley?
Well, I think it seems that there's quite an ambitious speech that, that the Prime Minister's looking to make, and it sounds like he has been, I think, a bit punchier in the last few days. He came to speak at an IPPR summit with Labour Together and Centre for American Progress on Friday, and he gave quite an ambitious speech, sort of setting out plans for national renewal. I think the question is, we need to get a bit more meat on the bones about what that looks like. So I think what will be really interesting as we see the speech coming up in the next few days is what does it mean to have national renewal? What does that look like in practice? I think the new towns is part of that, but we need to look a bit more about what does that mean in policy terms as we go into the next year.
Do you think people are listening, Jack? Do you think they're listening when they hear 300,000 new homes? Do you think they're listening when they hear, well, they're certainly listening when they hear ID because so many people don't want it. But from, Islamophobia, for example, are people listening to what the government's saying about that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, we're in a pretty precarious place, right, in politics. And look, I was obviously working for Rishi Sunak. We came out having a very large defeat, a heavy defeat. We struggled for sort of 2 years to get things done just because of the sort of political situation we were in, the finances, post-Ukraine, post-COVID and all of that. But, when Starmer won, even though, I know it was a large win, but it was thin in terms of popularity, there was elements even of me, right, who thought, look, it's been a bit of a carnage few years. And, we've got they've got a mandate now, they can actually get things done. We're only a year in. And 180-seat majority has proven not enough to get things done. Their welfare challenge, which is obviously huge and taking up lots of fiscal room, they couldn't even get that through with a 180-seat majority. I think it's a massive worry for everyone. But in terms of the public and what are the public listening to, I mean, the clear thing which is dominating most people's minds at the moment, which Starmer's trying to be strong on, Farage is really hammering it. Rishi was really big on it, stopping the boats, illegal immigration. I think Islamophobia. I'd rather digital IDs and being a solution to tackling that. Shabana Mahmood's comments today about sort of doing voluntary service and the like. These things, the public are just looking at Westminster as a bit of a joke. They, why can't we just fix these solutions? In one breath, you're talking about defending the country against Russia being aggressive, aeroplanes flying into NATO territory, and then on the other, you can't stop, dinghies coming across the channel.
OK, we'll return to this debate in just a second. We'll take a short break. What do you think of all that Steve Reid said there? 0344 499 1000. Marley and Jack are going to stay with me for a little bit longer. We'll ask the question as well, can digital ID solve the illegal immigration problem? We'll take one of your calls, loads of calls, of course, between now and 1 o'clock, but we'll put some of the points of a caller, or two perhaps, to Marley and indeed to Jack after the break. Stay with us.
Meghan Markle is quaking in her boots at the...
That serpent, Blair, is behind this. You know, he is just like the snake out of the Jungle Book with his spinning eyes. He tells you all these sweet platitudes about how it's all just going to be so marvellous. He is just totally unflushable, that man. And the fact that he's got his hands all over this tells you that this comes from the depths of hell. It's an abomination, and people need to start growing a spine and standing up to it. And unless we all refuse to use this damn thing, they will just foist it upon us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's talk to Laura Jane, who's given me a ring from Hampshire. Laura Jane, you're on with me and with Marley and Jack, 0344 499 1000. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Afternoon. Good morning, gents.
Hi there.
So, with regards to the digital ID, and I would like to be corrected, but in June 2025, the Data Use and Access Act became law. It was brought in November 2024, and in June 2025, it was given royal assent. And my understanding is that the digital ID bill, therefore, doesn't need to be debated and go through the normal procedure. It can be brought in under the guise of that act. And so I think that we're all standing up against it, and we're making a lot of noise, but I don't think we're going to be...
Well, there's also a huge parliamentary majority as well, and Labour can basically do what they want, can't they, Laura Jane?
But it's that act that is going to mean that they can bring in anything they want with regards to data, and this is effectively data.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I'm
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
Curious.
Yeah.
But there may be people who are better at this than me.
No. It's a very, very good point, Laura Jane, and I think a lot of people will be grateful to you for making it. Thank you for that. That's Laura Jane.
But I'm wondering, why did the press not pick up on this? I mean, I'm just a retired person, but I don't understand that. But my second point is, when anyone gets the chance, would they like to ask, are retired people of my age group and above going to be required? I know that down the line it's going to get pretty dystopian, but I'm just talking about now.
Well, we don't think so is the answer, Laura Jane, because it's apparently to work. But listen, thank you for your points. That's Laura Jane in Hampshire there. I mean, the point is that this is meant to be for working people, and I was kind of astonished, actually, when Steve Reid said, well, the Northern Ireland point, which may not be that pertinent to too many people, but you're talking about many, many tens of thousands of people coming across the border every single day to work. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who say they're Irish, who don't want a Brit card, and that he didn't seem to have thought that out. He said it was in policy development, begging the question, well, why did the Prime Minister say you cannot work in the UK without this?
I agree, that's a really important point that they need to resolve pretty swiftly.
They forgot about Northern Ireland. That's what happened.
It's really important for them to absolutely address that, because that's a huge question that you raised which they weren't able to answer. I think on actually the first point I think that your listener made, I think it might be true. I don't know about this particular act, whether they can pass it through secondary legislation, but I think they should pass it through Parliament, through an act of Parliament, because I think it would be important just to show that there's parliamentary
they'll want to do other things as well that bill perhaps doesn't allow them to do. And I suppose they can do what they want, Jack, can't they? But the question is whether you think there'll be any resistance from the Labour backbenches. I can't see it myself. What do you think?
Well, there's bits of briefing in the papers that some of the Labour MPs are quite outspoken about this. I don't know whether that's just because of the politics, is this the best we can do, or because they have serious concerns about it. But I mean, going back to Laura's point, I mean, I would be very surprised if they tried to get this in via the back door, because obviously, as we've seen since Friday, this was announced. There's already been huge backlash. 2.1 million, signed the petition. I'd be very surprised. I think there would be absolute uproar if they try to get this in via the back door. They'll require debate, but look, as you mentioned earlier, Peter, maybe this is what the government wants. Maybe this is just a big distraction point where everyone just starts fighting each other over something.
I actually don't think that this is about distraction. I think they think this is a tool to address migration. Actually, you know, one of the things Steve Reid made before is that the French are really concerned about ID. They're concerned about the level of irregular working in the UK. They think that's a pull factor. So I think one of the reasons they might be introducing this is to actually help UK-French relations, to unlock a better deal with France to be able to return people more easily. So that could be part of it. But I don't think this is actually just about the politics. I think there is a substantive policy argument here.
Jack and Marley, are you sports fans?
Indeed, just spent my whole weekend watching the Ryder Cup.
Okay, fair enough. Marley, are you a sports person?
Not hugely. My dad often took me to Cardiff City games as a child. He's a big Cardiff City fan, so I've got that link, but that's the closest.
Okay, so we've got a list of what Berkshire and Buckingham Council say, FA, or say offensive terms. Apparently you can't say "come on lads" anymore. You should say "come on team." I mean, if they are lads, if they are male, maybe that's an issue. You can't say linesman. You have to say assistant referee. You can't say Christian name. You've got to say given name. That's a small hill on which I will die. And you can't say bring your wife. It simply says bring your partner. You can't say guy. Say everyone. Don't say mother. Say parent and carer, and say they rather than he or she. Or you can't assume someone's married with kids. Simply say, do you have family joining today? What do you make of this, Jack?
Absolute nonsense. I mean, it's just people with too much time on their hands. Who has time? I mean, I'm sure your listeners will be sat there, Peter, thinking, who has time to sit there and think about all the things we should change saying? Like, this is not going to happen. People aren't going to change the way they say things. You know, I generally think, you know, when you're in these circumstances, you're at a football game, whatever. If it was a women's football team, you just naturally wouldn't say "come on, lads," would you? You know, you don't need to police these.
It's quite an Irish thing actually to call everyone of every in the same way as many people say guys when they mean men and women, or you know, males and females, you know, of any age. They often say guys. In Ireland, they often say lads, which is kind of an interesting thing. But what do you make of this changing our language and saying what you can and can't say?
I think this is perfectly fine, and no one's being told to say one thing or the other.
They are.
It's a recommendation for people to use inclusive language.
Would you ignore it then?
I'm sure plenty of people ignore it. I'm sure I wouldn't necessarily follow every single letter of this, but it's just a bit of advice, and you know, people can either pay attention to it or they don't have to. It's not a police state. You're not being required to say these things. It's just some suggestions.
Okay, thank you to Lorraine, who says on Steve Reid, another disgraceful gaslighting interview from Liber. Illegal immigrants come to Britain because it's the land of gold and the luxury first-class treatment they receive, not because they can access legal employment. No document, digital or other, in Lorraine's opinion, will stop illegal working. Employers are already governed by numerous laws and sanctions if they employ illegally. As for free speech, it seems to only apply if you support the left point of view, and Reid has no credibility on this. His deliberate attempts to sully reform and Farage just shows his lack of a moral compass and why reform will go from strength to strength, in Lorraine's opinion. Thank you as well to Leslie. He says Steve Reid announcing policy that hasn't been thought through shows typical of this symbolic shower. He's right in that you do, as Jack will attest, and Marley will too, you do put policies out there, you do consult on them, and they do change a bit, but a fundamental part of this, sorry for being the Northern Ireland person who's like banging on about this, but I think they just forgot about Northern Ireland, which sometimes central government does do. Simon in Kent says, oh great, new immigrant towns in our country, and Tony in Wiltshire says, simply illegal immigrants are not coming over the channel for employment. Great show, says Tony. Lots more to discuss, including on the debate desk. We've got the lads still with us, and we'll continue to talk to them and James Cleverly in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
That have been fighting so long.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Kier Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Kier Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Kier Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Kier Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, it's just gone 11 o'clock. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We're on the debate desk. We've heard from the Housing Secretary. We're about to hear from the Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, James Cleverly. What would you like me to ask him? 87222 with Talk in your text for questions, and I'll ask as many questions as I can fit into the interview, both mine and yours. Lots to discuss this morning. Kier Starmer under so much pressure. There's a land deal that he is under pressure over in terms of whether he paid his tax correctly on all of that. They've announced more homes. They've announced Islamophobia and a change to the law there. Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary, saying he'll veto a change if that is necessary. Lots to discuss, including whether saying "come on lads" is offensive. Starmer in the polls as well as he goes into Labour conference, which is happening in Liverpool right now. We'll bring you full coverage right across the next few days here on Talk. He is the least popular Prime Minister on record. We will talk about that. We'll talk about Israel and the fact that there could well be a deal in Gaza. That's coming up a bit later in the programme with the former ambassador to Yemen. Loads to discuss. I want to make sure you get your voice on the air between now and 1 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with me here on Talk. David in South Wales. So Steve Reid said no Islamophobia blasphemy law by the back door. So that tells me Labour is pursuing an Islamophobia blasphemy law. These politicians like Steve Reid can't lie straight in bed. So when they open their mouths and their lips start moving, the lies just run out of their mouths, says David. Well, that is a cynical approach, David, but just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. We're still on the debate desk. Marley Morris is with us, the Associate Director of Migration, Trade and Communities at IPPR, which is a think tank, and Jack Sellers, who's a former advisor to both Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Jack, there's a Reform UK politician, or former Reform UK politician, in trouble today. This is in the news as well. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this is quite a big story actually, which doesn't quite get the coverage that it warrants. But essentially, this is Nathan Gill, who was a former member of the Welsh Parliament. He used to represent UKIP back in the day before they went Brexit Party, and then came over to Reform. He was an MEP for Reform, and I think he led the election campaign in 2021. But essentially, he's just pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery, where essentially he was taking money to make pro-Russian statements in the European Union and in European Parliament, and anti-Ukraine statements. This is quite a big story, and Starmer in his interviews this morning sort of played into this. Farage will cozy up to Russia, and he'll be a bit of a security threat for all those reasons. And I think Number 10 is sort of starting to make that link.
Do you think Starmer went too far this morning when he talked about Reform UK pursuing, in his words, racist policies?
From his perspective, I actually think Starmer will be quite pleased with the way this went this morning. And just if I can give you a bit of context why I think that. I think, look, Starmer's trying to do 2 things. Obviously, one, he needs to give a bit of red meat to his Labour members as he goes into conference. Labour Party members are all going to be there, and they want him to be taking a strong approach to what a lot of them see as racist comments and from Reform and a racist party and the like. But also, what I think he's been a bit more clever. I think he's appealing to the wider public here, like by appealing to the mass left. I think he and Morgan McSweeney and others see this next election as them versus Reform, which is obviously what a lot of the polls say. But I think they're trying to appeal to this broader consensus of people, whether it's the Green Party, whether it's the Lib Dems, so that when it comes down to election day, it'll be Starmer versus Farage and presenting him as a threat.
The sort of the start of the anyone but Nigel kind of idea. Do you agree with that, Marnie?
That could well be the strategy. I think there are signs of that. I mean, just going back to the story, I think it is actually really concerning to see Russian infiltration into our politics, something that we need to be really robust about, whether it's whatever party it is.
He has pleaded guilty to this. He is facing the sanctions of the law.
Absolutely.
We haven't heard a huge amount from Reform UK about this, but I will ask them about it later.
But I think all party leaders just need to take real care in terms of who they're recruiting, in terms of their candidates, because we can't have this kind of infiltration into our politics. It undermines our sovereignty. OK,
digital ID is another big story we're talking about. I want to take a call from Louise in Aberdeen. Louise, I'm just going to preemptively apologise to you. If James Cleverly comes on the line, then we're going to be, I'm going to have to end the call and talk to him. But Louise, let's hope that doesn't happen and we can have a proper chat. You're on with me and also with Marley Morris and Jack Sellers. What would you like to say today, Louise?
All right, okay. So first of all, let's get the disingenuous story out of the big elephant in the room. This is not about immigration. Or and the 2 million people that have signed this petition do not believe that this ID app is about immigration. I mean, what are they going to do to people that come in the boats? Suddenly not give them hotels? Suddenly not give them food? And secondly, if I don't sign up to it, what are they going to do? Make me stateless? Are they going to tell me I can't work anymore? Are they going to tell me that because I can't work, I can't pay the mortgage?
Well, Kier Starmer has said, Louise, he has said in terms that you cannot work in the UK if you don't have a digital ID. That's what he said.
So that must mean then that while at the moment I have a legal right to work in this country, and I'm a lawyer, by the way, so and I have read human rights law. So what they're basically saying is for everybody in this country who currently has a right to live here and has worked here and I've got a passport, that suddenly I'm not going to be allowed to work in this country and I no longer have a right to be employed here. So they're actually going to make... Is that what they're saying?
I mean, I can't speak for the government, Louise, but that, I mean, it seems pretty clear. Let's just have a look at that clip, actually. It's about a 20-second clip of Kier Starmer saying that if you don't have it, you won't have a right to work in the UK. Let me just play this, Louise. I'll come back to you in a second, I promise. But let's just play this clip from Kier Starmer.
He was an MEP for Reform, and I think he led this.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
What do you think, Louise?
Well, it means that I won't have a right to work in this country anymore, even though I was born here, that I currently have a right to work, and by default, I'll no longer have a right to work. That's actually what it means for 67 million people in this country.
Would you quite simply say no to digital ID? Under no circumstances you would have it, Louise?
Well, you see, he's not read the room right, has he? This is what Starmer's not done. What he's done is he's seen the threat that Reform are posing. He thought, well, how are we going to tackle that? I know. We'll tell the country, look, you're all upset about immigration. We've got this ID card in the back burner that we've been planning for a while. We're going to pitch this as a way to solve the problems. Well, it won't. We know that because, you know, all these people coming in on the boats. And I don't have a problem with immigration, by the way, and asylum. I really don't. But it's not going to mean that they aren't going to have hotels. It's not going to mean that they won't have food. It won't mean any of that at all, because we can't get them out of the country. You can't make them leave. So that's a big, fat lie.
Okay.
So what it does is it means for the millions of people that are saying, no, I'm not going to sign up to it, because if Starmer was watching this petition, they are all saying, we are not signing up to it.
Okay.
They're arranging marches. They're really going off. They're prepared to die on this hill.
You're absolutely right, Louise, and thank you for your call. I was Louise in Aberdeen there, and Jack and Marley here still with me. We've got over 2.1 million people have signed a petition against digital ID cards, and that's since Thursday. That's a heck of a lot of people, Marley.
Yeah, and whilst I personally don't have a problem with digital ID, I think the scale of opposition and concern could prove challenging for the government. I mean, if there's that level of concern around this, and if there are people who will refuse to participate in the scheme, then that could prove quite damaging to it. So I think this is a real challenge for the government to navigate the politics of this.
What does the government actually do if 2 million people say, I'm not going to get this, I'm not going to take this, and I want to continue working? What's available to them, Jack?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I probably should know the answer. I mean, I imagine.
But are they going to criminally sanction people?
That's what I mean. In my mind, being realistic about this, it's going to end up being a massive flop because the government are going to have to walk back.
Okay, James Cleverly is on the line. The Shadow Deputy Prime Minister is with us. Sir James, good morning.
Peter, good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We're going into Labour conference this week. Kier Starmer says, I think Labour can pull this round. He has called reform policies racist this morning. Do you agree with him?
Well, the simple truth is that Kier Starmer is desperately trying to regain some credibility when it comes to patriotism. And frankly, I don't think anybody is buying it. This is a party that mocks the St. George's flag that people are flying from their cars and homes. Kier Starmer himself described all immigration legislation as racist, so he chucks that word around rather too loosely. The fact is, reform policies are nonsense and undeliverable, but he is trying to make himself sound tough, and frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it.
Steve has been in touch on text, and Steve says, are there any circumstances in which James Cleverly and the Conservatives would support a deal with Reform UK between now and the next election if it meant keeping Labour out of power?
Well, I don't think we should try and do deals with other parties. What we should do as a Conservative Party, and this is what we are doing, is setting about explaining why we are the only party. Let me give you one example. Reform are saying they want to cut taxes. Now, I'm a Thatcherite, I'm a Reaganite. I believe that low-tax economies grow faster, and that's better for everybody. But at the same time, Reform are also saying they need to whack up the welfare bill. And the two are completely incompatible. It's just not deliverable. And this is the problem. Nigel Farage is the face and voice of Reform. He's a brilliant political communicator, but the ideas that he's putting forward are just not credible, and they don't stand up to
but the point is, if you look at every single poll that has been released this year, over 70 of them, it puts you in the Conservatives into third or fourth place. The only way that you could be part of the next government, if an election were held tomorrow, and look, a lot can happen in a number of years, but the fact is that under Kemi Badenoch's leadership, you're not getting through. You're not. People are listening to Reform UK, and they're not listening to you, James.
Well, we have got work to do. Of course we've got work to do, and that work has got to be credible. And look, this is not about saying things that you don't agree with and don't believe in. And I don't believe in whacking up the welfare bill. And I don't believe in making promises about tax cuts that your other policies will make it impossible to deliver. I don't believe that. And I think at a time when many, many people are getting very disillusioned with politics, because political parties, and look, we did this to an extent when we were in government, I recognise that, when we made promises that we didn't deliver, that undermines the credibility in politics. Labour are doing this. They did that with border control, they're doing that with house building, they're doing that with taxes. They are undermining their own arguments. And Reform are doing exactly the same.
But the thing is that loads of our viewers and listeners, James, don't believe that you're telling the truth either, that your party is actually credible either. Where do you stand on digital ID?
I don't think it will work. We've looked at this. Good employer, and this is another thing. So Labour is saying a digital ID card will make it impossible for illegal migrants to work. But the point is, good employers already ask for ID, dodgy employers don't. And whether it's a physical ID or a digital ID, this is a distraction technique. Starmer's being asked awkward questions about his own personal tax affairs. He's being asked awkward questions about his chief of staff's undisclosed campaign funding.
The Electoral Commission said there's no case to answer there, though, with Morgan McSweeney.
Well, the Electoral Commission might say that. I don't think British voters agree at all. It stinks, and the British people know that. And so he's putting this ID card, which is a rehash of a Blairite policy that we rejected at the time and we reject now. It's a distraction, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be distracted.
Your party conference is going to be happening in Manchester in a week's time. Surely, I know that the discussion already is about the leadership of Kemi Badenoch. Is she the right person to lead the Conservative Party? Because she's just not making a difference. The polls are flatlining for you, aren't they?
Well, we've got to remember that when Margaret Thatcher first became leader, there were multiple attempts to kick her out as leader. My view has been consistent on this. We've got to recognise that constantly cycling through leaders is really, really counterproductive. We've got to make the case for conservatism. We've got to make the case for living within our means. We've got to make the case for unlocking business, for securing our borders, for strong defence, for reducing the welfare bill. We've got to do that. And if the conversation is constantly about leadership, then we are not going to get that message across. So what I want to see, and this is what Kemi's doing, I think this is what all Conservatives should do, is make the case for conservatism rather than trying once again what we did when we were in government, which is cycle through leaders far, far, far too quickly and undermine our own ability to land a message.
OK. Sir James Cleverly, Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, thank you for joining me this morning on Talk. Well, Kier Starmer, the Prime Minister, is speaking at Labour conference at the moment. Let's go straight to Liverpool and hear what he has to say.
And so it's not the government that should be thanked. It's not me that should be thanked. It's the families and campaigners who, after such unimaginable loss, had almost every obstacle put in their path to get to justice. But it is my privilege, and it is a privilege, to introduce someone now who can tell you all about that fight and what this law means for so many people across this country. Conference, please welcome Charlotte Hennessy to the stage. Charlotte.
So Starmer introducing a Hillsborough campaigner there, I think, embracing her, and many of the cabinet, of course, on the stage there. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch with all your comments and questions. We'll take loads of reaction to all of what we've just heard in just a minute here on Talk.
rampant blur is behind this. You know, he is just like the snake out of the Jungle Book with his spinning eyes. He tells you all these sweet platitudes about how it's all just going to be so marvellous. He is just totally unflushable, that man. And the fact that he's got his hands all over this tells you that this comes from the depths of hell. It's an abomination, and people need to start growing a spine and standing up to it. And unless we all refuse to use this damn thing, they will just foist it upon us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Brad in Cambridge, who says we need to get the counters out so that we can see how many times Starmer mentions Farage and reform in his conference speech. Says Brad in Cambridge. He has been introducing a Hillsborough campaigner at the moment. She is speaking at Labour Party conference. If there are significant developments, of course, we will bring them to you between now and 1 o'clock. Simon says if France are fed up with the pull factor of the UK, then France should allow us to return or stop the illegals crossing ahead of shadowing. Martin Hove says, do company directors who work for themselves and the self-employed people have to get digital ID to work? I'm a director of my own company, so I'm not bothering to get it to employ myself. It's nonsense. Sharon says, I'm not a reform voter, but if Starmer is calling Farage racist for wanting to control immigration, then why is he supporting the creation of an actual racist Palestinian state? Let's speak to Stephen in Liverpool. I think it's immigration and this digital ID that you want to have a chat about, Stephen. What would you like to say?
Yes, so basically, it's the last 30 years we've seen mass legal immigration in this country. We've told the government time and time again the reason we pulled out of the EU was basically we were fed up with the amount of immigration. We've got our government controlled by a very left-wing civil service. So even when the Conservatives are in power, using all of the legal arguments they can, they have constantly denied us an opportunity to get hold of our migration policy. The illegal one is easy to see, but it's dwarfed by the amount of people that we're letting into the country legally. And you look on the government website and you look at the jobs that are available that will allow you entry into this country. And yes, there are some very high-profile jobs, but there's a lot of middle management jobs that there's no need to bring people in. From a very diverse country, the Muslim problem isn't going to go away. It's cursing the whole of Europe. There's demonstrations all over Europe because their culture is to take over. And I was in hospital recently, met a lovely gentleman from Nigeria who'd left Nigeria because Islam is taking over the country. Christian men. And
do you feel that's happening in this country?
Sorry?
Do you feel that's happening in this country? Do you feel Islam is taking over?
I mean, we've just recently found out in Wales that I'm a Liverpool supporter, so that's why you probably called me from Liverpool, but I'm based in Wales.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And in Wales now, all of our schools are using halal meat in their kitchens. Now, halal meat is butchered,
Well, it's a horrible thing. I really don't like the idea of halal meat or indeed kosher meat.
Yeah, so we're allowing, so now, because to feed Muslim children in school, we have to use, rather than having two types of meat, all of the meat now in is halal.
And that's happening in a lot of restaurants as well, Stephen. Listen, thanks for your points. I appreciate them. I want to go to David in Sheffield in a second, but I just want to read out a message from Jason in the Lake District, who says that Steve Reid said Reform was a racist party. What have they said that is racist? Well, Kier Starmer says some of their policies are racist. That's his argument this morning. Steve Reid said, as Jason points out, that Farage was going to privatise the NHS. He said Farage went over to America begging them to put tariffs on British businesses. All demonstrably untrue and intentionally spouted lies by our current government. Thank you to Jason for that. Let's speak to David in Sheffield about digital IDs. David, you're on the air. What would you like to say? David, are you with us? No, he's not. We'll come back to him. Let's have a voice note on benefits and fraudsters.
The only people that benefit from digital ID are the fraudsters, because we're prey to them. They've already got all our bank details. When they swipe our credit cards, they're going to have your name, your address, your date of birth, your work history, your health records. Oh, beautiful. They're going to be rubbing their hands together, and we're stupidly sat here waiting for it to happen. What a load of idiots.
Thank you for that. Listen, speaking of digital ID, we know your name starts with L, and you do send us messages from time to time, but we don't know what your name actually is. Maybe that's intentional. I don't know. We know it begins with L anyway. We know Anna's name is Anna, and this is what Anna has said on a voice note.
Good morning, Peter. Anna, sorry. So Ahmed manages to get all the way through Europe, through countries that have digital ID, manages to get to Calais in a country that has ID. Border Force is notified as soon as Ahmed steps into his rubber dinghy, watched on by the gendarme. Border Force know he's an illegal. They still bring him to our coast, where he's picked up by government coaches facilitating his illegal status, taken to a processing centre courtesy of our government, then taken to a hotel courtesy of our government, where his stay is facilitated by Mr. Starmer, his free mobile phone, his dentistry, his doctors, his taxis, all given to him by Mr. Starmer. I'm sure he eats the odd swan and stalks the odd child while he's staying there, courtesy of Mr. Starmer's judicial system ignoring his crimes. How does I'm at work today, Peter, doing another lovely 10-hour shift to pay for all this. How does me having a digital ID on my phone help any of that, Peter? Please explain. Cheers.
Well, thank you for that, and I think there's some good points raised in that. Reform UK has responded to Kier Starmer after Sir Kier accused the party of promoting a racist policy on immigration. Zia Youssef, who is Reform UK's head of policy, said Labour's message to the country is clear: pay hundreds of billions for foreign nationals to live off the state forever, or Labour will call you racist. Reform's plan to ensure only British people can access welfare and that migrants contribute to society. What do you think of what Zia Youssef has said? Let me just read that again. Labour's message to the country is clear: pay hundreds of billions for foreign nationals to live off the state forever, or Labour will call you racist. Reform's plan will ensure only British people can access welfare and that migrants contribute to society. I want to play you at some stage today, perhaps we could get it, the behind the scenes team could get the clip of Starmer on Laura Kuenssberg's programme on BBC this morning, calling Reform UK's policies racist. We'll make sure you can make up your mind about that. We'll get that clip for you turned around. In the meantime, I want to talk to Lottie from Lancashire. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Lottie, you're very welcome to the programme.
Morning, Peter.
Morning. What would you like to say?
I can't tell you how mad I am this morning. You've spoken to Jardine and Cleverly today. You asked Cleverly, is Bader not the right leader for the Conservatives?
Yep.
The population knows she's not. But they won't have it. They won't have it, will they? So you asked Jardine about trans people.
Yep.
They're so disingenuous. All they are is self-serving fools. We have put up with 20 years of this bull, and they're still not listening to us. They're still not listening to us. All they're doing is self-serving themselves every single day. You asked Cleverly, would he be okay to join Reform, to pull this country out of the mire from Labour? No, he wouldn't. They're all self-serving fools. And if anybody votes for him again, you deserve everything you get. I'm so angry this morning, honestly. Oh,
Is there any political leader you think tells the truth, Lottie? Is there anybody who connects with you, who speaks your language?
Yes, there is. Nigel Farage, he speaks the truth, and that's why they're all on his back at the moment. They're all on his back because they know he's the only one that tells the truth.
The Prime Minister says that
it is.
the Prime Minister says that Nigel Farage is promoting racist policies. What do you think of that?
Really? Does anybody care what that code says anymore? That every time he opens his mouth, you can see the lies just coming out of it, like all the rest of them. They're all self-serving fools.
Lottie, thanks for your thoughts this morning. You're clearly very angry with what the politicians have been saying. I think we can safely say that Kelvin is too. This is what he said in his voice note.
Good morning, Peter. You do not need digital ID cards to stop migrants. You need a government, somebody with a brain cell, which Starmer hasn't got, to go over to France, negotiate a deal with France, work with them, have the Navy and have the Marines and everybody else, police, put in the waters right by their beaches, patrol the beaches, puncture all the dinghies and keep pushing the migrants back. The French have got to do it as well. It will benefit the French far more than a bloody digital ID card, and benefit us as well, because when they know they can't get the dinghies to get across here, they will bugger off back where they came from. It's not bloody rocket science. They're just too thick, too lazy, and don't want to do anything about it. That is the easiest way of getting them out of the country, doing that. It's more cost effective, wouldn't cost as much. We've already given France millions, and they're doing nothing. So work together, get rid of them that way. ID cards, show them where the sun doesn't shine, Starmer. You're brain dead, you're like a 2-year-old, you ain't got a clue, your days are numbered, and when you are kicked out, I hope your pension's taken away from you, because you don't deserve one. Bye.
Kelvin, I really think you should send us another voice note with what you really think. No, listen, on a serious note, very good points in a lot of that. So thank you for that. The Do Not Introduce Digital IDs cards petition, now 2,179,319 the last time we checked. Kier Starmer this morning calling reforms plans to make some illegal migrants reapply for visas racist and immoral. Also, Christine Jardine taking me on what a woman is. This is what Nick had to say in a voice note.
Hi Peter, it's Nick in Ashfield. I find it amazing listening to Christine Jardine. That's your chance to women stand with something like that on the Equalities Board or whatever it is that she's on. It's beyond stupidity, isn't it? You know, a man cannot become a woman. Fact. End of.
Nick, thanks for that. Joanna in Salisbury says, Cardi P, we will not be allowed to work without digital ID by law. They have to pay our bills, roof over our heads and feed us. It's our human right, the same as illegal migrants. I think Labour are snookering themselves. How many billions will it cost to implement when all the people that won't be allowed to work have financial and human rights legal entitlements? Good luck with that. The black market will be thriving. Thanks to Rob as well. He says, your interview with James Cleverly just emphasised that the Tories are still in a state of denial about how the vast majority of voters won't forgive them for the mess they left this country in. Thank you, Rob. Stephen Sheffield says digital ID is an infringement of our human rights. I'm an employer. When we interview potential employees, they have to bring their driving licence and passport with them and consent to a Criminal Records Bureau check, which is more than enough to check their rights to work. Paul says digital ID won't prevent those people who are already working illegally. Do we actually believe that if employers who already give these people jobs without them having a national insurance number will suddenly tell them, I can't give you a job now because you don't have digital ID? These people are getting permission. What are the countries going to do about it? Declare war on us, says Paul. And a final one before the break from Paul in Bedfordshire. He says, regarding digital ID, would it not be sensible to mandate digital ID to claim taxpayer-funded government benefits? Great show, says Paul. Loads to discuss. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. We'll delve into Kier Starmer's future, what those polls are telling us. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Been having a look at some of the tweets that people have sent in. Thank you to Llama Chameleon, great name, who says Labour's deplorables moment. They have learned nothing. They are completely out of touch. They know the system has been gamed by chancellors who have been caught holidaying in the country. They say it's too dangerous to return, yet they double down on their policy. Ellie says, absolutely love the call from Lottie a few minutes ago. She spoke for me at least, another Lancashire lass. Carol says, I grew up on a farm, a small holding. I saw a video of halal slaughter the other day. I sobbed. I'm now finding I'm checking every other pack in our shops, not even wanting to eat meat now. I'm appalled finding out British schools are using it. These are British state schools. And Mark has talked about Christine Jardine and what she's saying earlier. Having listened to your interview with Peter Cardwell, Christine, it's clear you've forgotten about the rights of women and girls, but instead are more worried about the rights of trans women, brackets men, to enter women's safe spaces, including the changing rooms and sports. Please tell me what rights these men don't have that the rest of us do have. On digital ID, I spoke to Steve Reid a little bit earlier on. He is the Housing and Communities Secretary. This is what he said about digital ID, the big issue that you've wanted to talk about now for the last few days. Labour introducing a big new policy, a mandatory digital ID to work in the UK. This is what Steve Reid said.
We know from what people tell you on the doorsteps in the streets wants to tackle the level of illegal immigration that we've got coming in. And one of the things that makes this country more attractive for illegal migrants to head for, compared to places like Europe, France, Germany that they're passing through, is they have ID that makes it tougher to get a job. We don't, which makes it easier to disappear into the economy, get employment and stay here. And we have to get rid of some of those pull factors that make this the destination that too many people are choosing to come to because it's possible to come here and make a living. So digital ID is a check that you would have to show, much harder to forge than just showing a letter or a bill, much harder to forge, to stop people who should not be working from being able to work, but it also allows the authorities to collect data on particular employers or places of employment so that those employers who are choosing to recruit people who are here illegally can be identified and then enforcement carried out against them.
Steve Reid speaking to me a little bit earlier on, the Housing Secretary. Well, the petition to not introduce digital ID is at 2,181,636 in the last few minutes. Clearly, there are a number of people who disagree with Kier Starmer on many things, as well as some polling which shows he's the least popular Prime Minister on record, and Rachel Reeves now the least popular Chancellor since records began. This is an Ipsos poll giving Reform UK a 12-point lead over Labour in Westminster. Nigel Farage's party on 34%, Labour down 3 percentage points to 22%. It's the lowest score Ipsos has recorded for Labour since 2009, the year before Gordon Brown led the party to defeat and a 14-year absence from power. Well, Robert Hayward is with us now, a member of the House of Lords and a noted psophologist, pollsman. Robert, what does all this mean, really? It just seems to be a very consistent trend. Kier Starmer going into Labour conference in Liverpool, many problems for him awaiting.
Morning, Peter. Yes,
morning.
Really big problems for Kier Starmer and therefore for the Labour Party, because as you just identified, the scale of disapproval is at a level unknown previously. And what is significant is that it's come so soon after a general election. There are all sorts of sub-messages, which no doubt some of which we'll touch on in the next few minutes. But overall, it is a real problem for Kier Starmer and therefore for the Labour Party.
I think Labour can pull this round, he says. Can he?
That answer in itself displays a degree of caution which you would not normally expect from a Prime Minister. I believe, normally people would be absolutely firm, yes, we've got a plan, yes, we can do it, we're on our way, etc. And I actually found that phraseology in itself particularly significant. He's not a gung-ho politician, but still one would have expected Sir Keir to have been much more emphatic in his answer to that question.
What are the problems in regard to the messages that are coming across? Digital ID, more than 2 million people in 4 days have signed a petition against it on the parliamentary website. What are the other policies that are just not working for them at the moment, do you think, Robert?
I think digital ID has yet to impact on the opinion polls. It takes normally about 10 days before things feed through onto an opinion poll. So therefore, one's looking back to, there is no question, immigration is the dominant issue. It's an issue ahead of the economy. In Western democracies, and I'm not just talking here about Britain, but across the whole of Western Europe, the United States, Canada, when you do an opinion poll, normally the issue that is top by a clear way is the economy. On this occasion, and for the last few weeks, it's been immigration. But the government is not getting satisfactory ratings on not only immigration, but on the economy as well, and a whole series of other matters. But certainly immigration and the economy are the two big ones that are, and it's just the lack of clarity and belief that the Labour government and Kier Starmer can deliver that's dragging down Kier Starmer's ratings.
Yeah, it's fascinating as well that we see no matter what happens with Nigel Farage, his popularity and his party's popularity seem to keep going. How important are the personalities now, especially when we look at we're hearing phrases since records began, since polling started, and so on. How much is the personal aspect more important? Because we see Kemi Badenoch, but particularly Starmer himself, at -50 when you ask people, do you think he's favourable or unfavourable?
I think the personalities is key here, because there are some pollsters who are very strongly of the view that actually the best way of judging a general election result, and we're not in general election times at this stage, but the best way of judging is actually looking at the rating of best prime minister rather than the particular party. People are also much more willing to respond by being negative or positive, but generally here negative towards politicians rather than their party. The voter tends not to switch party, i.e. brand, so quickly as they do against individual politicians.
Robert, as always, thank you. That's Robert Hayward there, Lord Hayward, who's a Conservative peer and a polling expert. We've had a couple of messages about what's in the top left-hand side of my screen. If you're looking at the television, there's just a little blip with our screen behind me. It does look a bit like the Ukraine flag. It's not. We're not flying the Ukraine flag. We're not flying any flag at all, actually, apart from the Union flag, of course, in our hearts and in our minds. But that is just a little blip with the screen that's behind me. Our technical people, I'm sure, will fix it before too long. I just want to play that clip, actually, from Laura Kuenssberg's programme this morning on the BBC, exactly what Kier Starmer said about Reform UK's policies and how racist he finds them. Let's just hear what the Prime Minister said to the BBC this morning.
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote Reform or are thinking of voting Reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly.
That's what the Prime Minister said. Reform UK have responded. This is after the Prime Minister, in those words you heard, accused Reform UK of promoting a racist policy on immigration. Zia Youssef, who is Reform UK's head of policy, I've interviewed him on the show many times, he says Labour's message to the country is clear: pay hundreds of billions for foreign nationals to live off the state forever, or Labour will call you racist. Reform's plan will ensure only British people can access welfare and that migrants contribute to society. Well, we've got a Reform UK politician coming up in the programme a little bit later on. In the programme we'll ask him about that. But what do you think? Do you think the Prime Minister was right to make those comments? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
when I was a young lad, mate, I was going through hell, and the only thing we had that you got me through, and I mean this, you and Tommy, got me through the most difficult, horrific times of my life. Looking forward to you guys that made me laugh. You made me the person I am today. I was going through a lot at home. I was in and out of children's homes for certain stuff with my family. And you, and waiting with my mum for you pair to come on, you saved me. And you pair saved me, literally.
Thank you very much.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Tech Up Dave is a great man. He works behind the scenes, he listens to all the voice notes, and he's very close to shouting out the window, I'm angry as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. I don't know if you've seen Network, but please keep your voice notes to under a minute, because we've received many of them. We love your voice notes. We'll play out as many of them as we can, and we always learn something from people's opinions, but please keep them to less than a minute, because Tech Up Dave has to listen to them all and he runs out of time if they're over a minute. So just keep your thoughts to under a minute if you would. We actually received a voice note yesterday that we didn't play yesterday, but we're going to play right now actually, from Tom, which was really, really disturbing and horrible, and it really made me sad to hear it, what's happened to Tom and his family. Let's play it now.
Hello, Peter. You and I spoke via private messaging a few months ago on Twitter about the anti-Semitism I've been suffering, having eggs thrown at my house, bacon being left over my windscreen, and my son experiencing anti-Semitism at school, where I had to take him out of school. He went from one school to another, and then he received more anti-Semitism, and they beat the absolute crap out of him. It's got so bad that I've now sold the house. I'm in Wickford in Essex, and I'm moving up north for a fresh start, and I won't be telling a soul about me being Jewish. They've driven me out, mate. They've driven me out. It's like the Second World War all over.
Tom, I was so sad yesterday to hear that message. I think it's really important. We played it today. There's a real problem with anti-Semitism in this country. It is absolutely disgraceful, ridiculous and awful that happened, that people felt they could abuse you, abuse your son, and that you felt you needed to move, and that you've got to hide your faith and your identity. That's just a dreadful thing. I'm really sorry that's happened to you, and I hope that playing that message allows people to know this is a real thing. We don't just talk about it because we want to. We don't just talk about it because it's in the news. We talk about it because it happens to real people like Tom, like his son. And Tom, all I can say is your new life in the north of England, I hope it is a safe, secure and happy one as well, because I know that happiness is something that you haven't had for a while. I wish you well, and please let us know how you're getting on. Send me a message maybe in a few weeks when you get everything settled, when you get the house moved done and all the boxes unpacked and you're really settling in. Would you send us another message maybe in a month or two and just let us know how you're getting on? We'd love to hear how you're getting on, Tom, or maybe even come on the air and have a chat. Let's speak to some people on the air now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Robert's in Hertfordshire and has given me a ring. Robert, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just so saddened by that last item.
It's dreadful, isn't it? Absolutely dreadful.
You know, it really has shocked me to the core, that poor man. Moving on, we're going on about, you know, we've had the human rights working against ordinary British people for a couple of years now. Regarding the identity cards, where's our human rights? You know, haven't we got any human rights? Surely it's a bridge. If it was the other way round and it was only for migrants, they'd be jumping up and down, bumping into furniture. So where is our human rights? And the other thing I'd like to say is, where's our representation? You know, forget about the politicians. It takes too long. We need proper legal people to represent the ordinary person. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we have representative democracy. We vote, and our politicians are meant to represent us, but clearly, Robert, you don't think they are representing us, especially when it comes to things like this?
Well, it takes too long. I mean, you imagine how much Labour's only been in power for 14, 15 months, and the damage they've done in 15 months is absolutely breathtaking. And the only thing they can whine on about is what the Conservatives done beforehand and the breakfast clubs.
Well, also today, Starmer has said that he thinks the immigration policy of Reform UK is racist.
Well, he's going to say that, but I think Starmer can walk through that. I think he can walk. The thing is as well regarding the migration, I've got my own system. I call it the greengrocer syndrome. Now, me and you are greengrocers. We've gone to the cash and carry and we bought some apples, but some of them are bad. We don't go back to the same place. We've got enough bad apples, thank you very much. So we're not going to go and buy some more. Yeah. What I'm saying is we've got enough bad apples of our own in this country. That's fine. And we're taking care of it in prisons, but we don't need any more bad apples.
Yeah. Robert, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Fred in West Sussex has been in touch and says the government is still on about ID cards. The main issue, how will ID stop the illegals in small boats getting into our country? Not on about working whilst here. When will this plonker get it? Dave in Dorset says the outright cheek of Starmer. He had 14 months to make things right, and all he has done successfully is to increase his and his government's unpopularity. Look at the 2 million plus against digital ID as an example, says Dave. Margaret says, great call from Lottie, from Anna and Kelvin, all at 11:25 that you played there. Or they all speak for the people. This ID, digital ID, is a distraction, says Margaret in Birmingham. Ian says, Robert made a good point earlier, Robert Hayward, the turnaround is based on doing the same stuff louder with the same people. It just boggles the mind. And Phil in Thurrock says the illegal immigrants or legal migrants to the UK break the law or play the system. Are they an actual race of human beings now? What does that make the rest of us Britons? How can we tell who's who when we all look the same? Let's hear another voice note now. This is on digital ID again.
I'm listening to this debate about the digital ID, and it's going to make absolutely no difference to the illegal migrants because they'll just do what they do anyway. They'll carry on their Deliveroos, their Uber Eats, their food delivery services. They'll drive taxis under other people's taxi licenses. They'll sell drugs. They'll be cultivating cannabis in houses. There's so many ways that this ID card is not going to tackle illegal immigration.
Thank you for that. Les is in Colchester. You're on the air. What would you like to say, Les? You're very welcome to the programme.
Oh, hello there. Yes, really it's about, again, the digital ID and the immigrants. But if we detained them and didn't let them free in society, they wouldn't be able to work illegally because they wouldn't be allowed out of a detention centre.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
If we can't stop and turn the boats back, which I think we should be doing, then we detain them. They can't take jobs. They can't work on the black.
It makes perfect sense, and the problem is there are too many of them. The processing is taking far too long, and after a year they are allowed to do some work. And the problem is that the processing isn't happening fast enough. They're here, they're kept here, and then they're not processed, and we don't know whether they're legitimately asylum seekers or not. So the system just doesn't work on so many different levels. Do you think digital ID will help in any way?
No, and I won't have it.
You're not going to have it at all?
No. I'm 65 years old, and I've seen Labour, what they've done to the country before. I've seen what they've done to it now, and I will not do anything that bloke tells me to do.
Les, thanks for your thoughts there in Colchester. Appreciate that. Simon's in Derby. Thank you very much indeed, Les. Simon's in Derby. Simon, what point would you like to make?
Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
Hi, just going to say, if there's 2 million people that are already against the idea, which I'm one of them, imagine how many mortgages aren't going to get paid and how much tax is not going to be collected because we won't be allowed to work. Whoopee.
How far will you go, Simon? Will you honestly not work if you're told you can't work unless you have a digital ID? Is that honestly something you're going to do?
Well, I'm lucky, I suppose. I'm self-employed. So.
Right, okay.
but you and I spoke about it before, about 3-4 weeks ago, about the disclosure barring service, which I think is the way forward, because that way it doesn't harm anybody. I mean, they've got all the information, and if an employer wants to know about you, that's all he's got to do. What Starmer is doing, if you noticed about the Chagos Islands and this, he doesn't want to discuss it. We don't even get the chance in Parliament for the MPs to actually discuss a very important subject like this. It's not even well. I'm sorry, but it should be discussed. We don't live in a dystopian.
Totally.
I say we possibly do, but it's not right that they're trying to enforce serious things on the public who live here, whether you're an immigrant or whether you're somebody who lives here from birth. To not actually be able to discuss it through Parliament is not right.
Well, they will to some degree, but the fact is they're not going to listen to any other points. They're just going to do it. And when Steve Reid says, look, it's not, the policy is not entirely developed, it's not entirely sorted, well, they've agreed on the principle of it. And the Prime Minister of this country has said you cannot work if you don't have a digital ID. I mean, you can't be much clearer than that.
Well, he says that, but it doesn't mean to say the population say that.
Very good point. Simon, great points as always. Thank you, Simon, in Derby there. Thank you also to Gary in Scunthorpe, who says there's only one reason why an employer wants to employ migrants, legal or illegal, because they will work longer for less and not complain about conditions. An ID card will be last on the list. Fern in Glasgow says Labour's got less than 10 million votes of a population of 66 million, and the ID card petition is now over 20% of the number of votes that Labour got. Wonder how many signatures were Labour voters. Mark in Solihull says many other countries such as France, Germany and Greece already have digital ID, and they still have illegal migration. So how can the justification be used here that it will curb illegal migration? I've asked that question a number of times, and you're absolutely right to make it. Jane says, so reform are racist and voters are far right. Thanks, Prime Minister. We get it. We understand what you're saying. Well, actually, there's lots more to discuss on all of this. We'll hear more on that as the programme continues, or here right through to 1 o'clock. We're also going to hear what on earth is going to happen in the Middle East. Could there be a deal? Netanyahu in the White House tomorrow. We'll get the best commentator in the Middle East, Edwin Fitton-Brown, is with us in just a couple of minutes.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's loads to talk about this Sunday. Can digital ID solve the illegal migration problem? And could there be a solution to what is happening in the Middle East? We'll talk to Edmund Fitton-Brown, who is fast becoming my favourite Middle East commentator. We've got Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, going to be in the White House tomorrow. What will that mean for us as well as we recognise a Palestinian state? Loads of people getting in touch about Nigel Farage and indeed the Prime Minister's comments as well about immigration policy from Reform UK. We've got a Reform UK politician on later, adding to your stable of Liberal, Democrat, Labour and Conservatives who spoke to a bumper political show, and we'll remind ourselves of some of what those politicians have been saying in the next hour between now and 1 o'clock. As always, I want your views on the air as much as we can. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. These shows, my shows at the weekend, more than any other show on this network, are where you get to have your say. We'll play as many voice notes as we can. We'll get as many people on the air as possible. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, otherwise Tech Up Dave gets very tetchy, becomes Tetchy Up Dave. Less than a minute for your voice notes. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss in the next hour here on Talk. And just if you're interested in my schedule this week, I expect I'll chat to Jeremy at some stage on Wednesday about the politics of the day. Obviously, Kier Starmer has a speech on Tuesday. May well be broadcasting about that. We'll see what he has to say. I'm not going to Labour conference this year, but I am going to the Conservatives and usual drive shows on Thursday and Friday, and of course the weekend shows next weekend as well on Saturday and Sunday. Today has been a bumper day for political interviews because it is of course the start of Labour conference. It is happening in Liverpool. Kier Starmer has said something pretty controversial actually on the BBC this morning. We spoke to Steve Reid, one of his lieutenants. Play a bit more of that a bit later on, but I just want to remind you what the Prime Minister said about Reform UK's immigration policy. This is the Prime Minister speaking to the BBC earlier today.
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote Reform or are thinking of voting Reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly.
Well, let's hear what Paul has to say. He sent us a voice note on this. You can send them in on 0344 499 1000. This is what Paul has to say.
Morning, Peter. Paul in Burnley. Starmer's description of Reform's immigration policy as being racist and immoral is nothing more than a far-left dog whistle. And the thing is, it will secure even more votes for Reform by describing people who are concerned justifiably about the rate of immigration into this country as racist and immoral. Just plays into the hands of Reform. It reminds me of when Hillary Clinton described Republican voters as deplorable. The more that they go for Reform, the more that they attack Farage, the more votes they will get. Cheers, Peter. Thanks very much.
Well, Paul, I think a number of people will agree with that. I'm sure Zia Youssef, Reform's head of policy, will be one of them. He has said, in response to what the Prime Minister has said, Labour's message to the country is clear: pay hundreds of billions for foreign nationals to live off the state forever, or Labour will call you racist. Reform's plan will ensure only British people can access welfare and that migrants contribute to society. Well, we'll return to that story. In fact, we'll talk to a Reform UK politician in just a few minutes' time. But I want to talk about the Middle East now. The defiant Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will finish the job in Gaza. Trump seeking to end the war. Some pretty curious comments from him earlier this week. He says, I think we have a plan. I will talk to Edmund Fitton-Brown about that in just a second. But I just want to remind ourselves of what Benjamin Netanyahu said. So many people from lots of different states walked out at the United Nations. He said essentially what the policies of many different countries, including the appeasement of Hamas terrorists, has shown is that murdering Jews pays off. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu told the UN on Friday morning.
This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. They danced on the rooftops. They threw candies. That's both in Gaza and in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as you call it. You know what message the leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off.
Well, that was just after many delegates from many member states of the United Nations, dozens of them, walked out before Benjamin Netanyahu spoke. We also had, around that time, very interesting comments from Donald Trump, who'll meet Netanyahu at the White House tomorrow. Well, Edmund Fitton-Brown is the former UK ambassador to Yemen. He's a former coordinator of UN sanctions and threat assessment. He's also a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracy. He joins us now from Austin in Texas. Edmund, in terms of where we are, in terms of what the two men, Netanyahu and Trump, will discuss tomorrow, what's your assessment of Trump's comments the other day, where we are, if peace will happen, if the hostages will be freed? Where are we in all of this?
Well, Peter, it's great to be back. There is a really interesting moment right now, and it's come towards the end of the UN General Assembly meeting in New York. And I think it's partly been accelerated by all the diplomacy that's been going on in the background in New York. And a lot of that has involved Trump's envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And where we seem to be now is that Trump has presented a 21-point plan to a group of Arab and Muslim leaders that he met with. And he's now going to present that plan to Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House tomorrow.
So what do we know about what's in that? I've read various bits of reporting, Al Arabiya, for example, one of the Middle Eastern stations, sort of talking about quite a lot of the detail of that. Do you think this is a workable plan? What do you think Netanyahu's reaction is likely to be?
Well, the first thing to say is it's very, very ambitious, as any kind of Middle East peace plan always will be. It calls for an immediate ceasefire. It calls for the release of all of the remaining hostages and the remains of those who are dead within 48 hours. There would be the release of large numbers of Palestinian security prisoners. So all of this does resemble a little bit previous ceasefire agreements that have taken place during the last 2 years. But there's more. And above all, there is the idea of starting on a path towards the establishment of a Palestinian state, and also the establishment of some kind of interim authority in Gaza, and a lot of reconstruction. So the reason I set that out in some detail is that this is going to force a number of issues. I guess from the point of view of the people that Trump met from the Arab and Muslim world, it must have been acceptable. I'm not sure what the position is likely to be with Hamas on this, but this creates a big problem for Benjamin Netanyahu, because anything that starts the ball rolling towards the creation of a Palestinian state is going to be unpopular with hardliners in his government.
How secure is he in all of this? I actually interviewed Yossi Cohen the other day, who may well be his successor as leader of Likud. And I just wonder, from Netanyahu's perspective, with an election which needs to happen in the next few months, how secure he is and how secure that coalition is. We've had people in Israel pulling out of the coalition but still kind of supporting the government. It seems pretty unstable, but nonetheless it has been sustained for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, you're asking the absolutely key question here, Peter, and this goes to the nub of what a lot of people who want to see Israel successful and secure are concerned about, and that is whether Benjamin Netanyahu is mainly concerned with Israel's national interests or whether he's mainly concerned with his own survival and his own political interests. He is presiding over a very insecure coalition, and in that coalition, the National Security Minister and one other minister are both threatening that they will resign and they will bring down the government if he makes concessions that they consider to be unacceptable. And you have to remember that Israel was racked with general elections before this period of Netanyahu's rule. All of the general elections came out very close to 50-50, which makes the government very insecure. And the backdrop to that is that Netanyahu faces a number of legal difficulties in Israel. And if he falls from power as prime minister, he will face both an inquiry into what happened on the 7th of October and why Israel was so badly prepared, but he may also face legal jeopardy and potentially jail time.
Certainly, and we know that some of the evidence or attempts for him to give evidence to corruption trials and so on have been postponed on many occasions. Just speaking of politicians in trouble and political figures perhaps in trouble, Steve Witkoff's son, the New York Times alleges, solicited billions from Qatar as his father negotiated ceasefires. Is this going to be a problem, do you think, or is this just noise?
I mean, I don't want to call it just noise, but I don't think it's going to be a big problem either. The reality is that the Trump administration has a certain way of doing business, and a lot of this is to do with people's connections. He trusts people who have successfully done business, and the overlap between statesmanship and business in the Trump administration is something that we're finding it hard to get used to. But I don't see that creating any kind of problem for Witkoff with Trump.
Just with Netanyahu at the UN on Friday, very arresting scenes there of many, many people walking out. You used to work for the UN yourself. What goes through your mind when you see the people who won't even listen to the leader of Israel?
I see a bunch of overgrown student protesters. And it used to frustrate me enormously at the UN. Unfortunately, this particular part of the UN that's been highlighted in the news this week because of the this gigantic event in New York, it's the General Assembly. It brings everybody together, all of the UN member states, and it has a long and really quite shameful history of grandstanding by some of the worst leaders in the world. And so when you get a moment like Netanyahu speaking, you will get all of these childish, knee-jerk anti-Israel countries walking out to try and make their point. What I liked in all of this was watching the United Arab Emirates delegation, who sat respectfully throughout the speech and didn't leave until the applause had died down. And that's how everybody should have reacted.
Thank you, as always, Edmund Fitton-Brown there, former UK ambassador to Yemen, former coordinator of UN sanctions and threat assessment, and a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracy. Always worth listening to in his views on the Middle East. The big issue you want to talk about today, we're on day 4. You want to talk about it, we'll talk about it, because this is my show, but it's your show too. And people are still ringing in, you're still sending your messages in. We're going to get as many of those on the air as we can, because digital ID is the #1 issue you want to talk about. Let's speak to Dave in Hampshire. He's giving me a ring. 0344 499 1000. Dave, what would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Yeah, what I'd like to say about digital ID is I don't think people realise just how sinister this is, because he's talked about working people, but what about the 13 million pensioners? Is he going to take away their pension? What about the 9 million people economically inactive? Is he going to take away their benefits? What about the home carers, the homemakers, the self-employed? They don't come under this, but he'll obviously want to roll it out to everyone. So is he going to force them to do something?
Well, he says at the moment it's just about working, but my issue is the same one you have, Dave. Where does this go? Once this starts, where does it go?
Well, exactly, and with digital ID, obviously the end game is to roll it out to everyone. He won't just initiate this just for the people who require employment, because that's only a fraction of the demographic anyway, isn't it, of society anyway. So I don't believe it. I just think there's something so sinister about this, and it really worries me how they're going to force people to do it.
Dave, thanks for your points. That's Dave in Hampshire there. Peter's in Liverpool. Peter, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hi. About digital ID, if Starmer wants to catch people working illegally, just go down any high street in the country.
Well, that's a really good point, Peter. Why don't they just enforce the law that's there already?
Yeah, I mean, there was a storm kicked up about the huge delivery companies that are seem to be profiteering from this illegal working. Why was there nothing done then? Why were there not huge fines imposed? Nothing's been done about it. It's all, and to be honest, some of the commentators you have on, I think they really need to get out on the street and listen to the ordinary people.
Well, we can see this, Peter, can't we? You can see it in Liverpool. No, I can see it in London. We can see what's happening.
Well, Liverpool is normally a lefty Labour Party place, but believe me, it's not anymore. This is the most despised Prime Minister. I'm 73. I've never known a Prime Minister more despised than this guy.
Very interesting.
And
okay.
If he thinks he can turn it round, he's got another thing coming.
Peter, thank you so much for your thoughts there. Hazel is in Hampshire. Hazel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yes, good morning, Peter.
Hi.
I was talking about the digital ID.
Yes.
These immigrants, they're coming in, aren't they? And they're given a phone. That's what we're...
Some of them are, yeah.
So they should be in some sort of holding place.
Well, you would imagine we'd be able to track them if we give them a phone. We should say, well, where are you and what are you up to?
Yeah, but you could put their digital ID on their phone.
Correct.
And not on ours.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point.
We're already documented up to the eyeballs, aren't we? So
well, why do we need more?
They should be.
Totally. I totally agree with you, Hazel. Thanks for your points. Appreciate that. That's Hazel in Hampshire there. Thanks to Leslie, who makes a good point as well, saying 16-year-olds are giving the vote. As Starmer says, they work and pay tax. Well, 16-year-olds are exempt from the digital ID, so they presumably won't be able to work. Catherine in the Isle of Lewis as well. Quite a number of messages about this, and thank you to Tom for his message earlier. Catherine, speaking about what Tom had said, being driven out of his home because of anti-Semitism, Catherine in the Isle of Lewis says, "Hello, Peter. How sad for us to hear Tom's message earlier. Informing you of the anti-Semitism he and his family have been facing. What is this country coming to? Please pass my best wishes to Tom and his family as they set off for the north. We wish them the very best for the future." We absolutely do. And it's just horrendous that people have to move because of this dreadful intimidation, this dreadful anti-Semitism in our society. We'll take far more calls between now and 1 o'clock. Of course, we're going to talk to a Reform UK politician as well. They're under pressure to their former leader in Wales, who's pleaded guilty to accepting bribes for talking about Russia at the European Parliament. We'll find out what Alex, who we're talking to in a minute or two, thinks about what Kier Starmer has said about immigration policy as well, and we'll get all of your views as well. There's loads of time to get your call in, get your voice note in, less than a minute, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
people watching this in their thousands who are going, I've just done my week's work.
Yeah.
I've paid my bills. I've fed my kids. I can't even afford to get an Indian tonight. I might have a can of lager. My missus is there. And these people, it is becoming so farcical and so embarrassing. And they wonder why the British people have had it. They have had it in their millions.
If you can't get an Indian, right, you just call up this taxi company, they'll bring you an Afghan for 250 quid, because it says here... there's
Did I deliver that quite well for you?
Yeah, it was, thank you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Paul in Belfast, who says there will never be a digital ID under Labour. It's impossible to design and pay for such a scheme in 4 years. Look at the NHS computer system. This is a distraction, a diversion. Labour are in quicksand without a rope to pull them out, says Paul. Des in Worcestershire says, I truly believe Starmer announced the digital ID rollout as a deflection from the donations issue, the Morgan McSweeney issue. He is totally delusional if he thinks the public can't see through his schemes, says Des in Worcestershire. Gary says immigrants only work... Oh, that's we've read that out before, I think. Nathan in Perth says, here's a question that needs to be answered. If I have a digital ID, would I need a passport still? If so, what is the point? And... on the story we were having a little bit earlier on about what you can and can't say or should or shouldn't say. You shouldn't say, come on lads, at a football game. You should say, come on team. And Brian in Spain says, Burks and Bucks FA, the clue is in the name Burks. Good luck telling a football crowd what to say. Yes, it doesn't often work when you tell a football crowd what to say. Sorry, you can't say that. Doesn't usually work particularly well when people are passionate enough to pay money to see a team, including one with such a consistent record as Glenavon FC, which sadly has been all too consistent in its losing streak so far this year, as my father will attest. Sandy is in Suffolk and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Sandy, you're very welcome to the programme. You want to talk about housing?
I do, Peter, and I have got so many points to make, I really don't know where to start. This idea of building new towns is ludicrous. I travel about the UK, and every town, every village has got new housing estates being built at the edge of them. Mm-hmm. On all of these estates, the houses aren't selling. Some of them have been on the market for over a year. Prices are being slashed, and they're still not selling. I think unless the government are going to say all of these new houses are going to be up for rent, at very, very affordable rents, there's no point. The market at the moment is absolutely flooded with properties because landlords are selling their rental properties.
That's right. Being a buy-to-let landlord is barely worth it these days.
The market is flooded. Kirsty Allsop did a piece in the Telegraph this week saying the housing market is dead, and it is. I've got a new estate near me in a place called Trimley, near Felixstowe, where there were 80 affordable homes in the planning permission. the developer has just applied to East Suffolk Council to have the 80 affordable homes removed because he said if they remain, he won't make a profit. The government don't seem to understand that all housing developers are businesses that have to make a profit. And they're not going to make a profit unless they can sell the houses at a relatively expensive price.
So when you hear the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid, say he wants to build 1.5 million new homes by the end of this Parliament, what do you think, Sandy?
I think another thing is where the hell is he going to get the tradesmen to do this? The estate at the edge of my village had a massive great banner up outside of it for months and months and months saying bricklayers required, and the site was delayed for so long because they couldn't get the tradesmen. So I think that's absolutely ludicrous as well. I'm also very concerned, Peter, that all the reports you hear say birth rate amongst British people is dropping. Well, who are these houses all going to be for then?
Well, we know the population of this country. We know the population of this country, Sandy, has gone up by 750,000 in the last year, and 98% of that is to do with immigration.
Not white and black British people. That's not where the population's going up. White and black British people, the population, the birth rate's going down amongst white and black British people. So are we devastating our countryside, which we can never reclaim? Are we devastating it for people we don't want here? And I think people really ought to take this seriously as well, Peter. We've got fields on the edge of our village, Peter, that we used for corn, rape, onions. Now they're houses. And I've got another village, Peter, at the bottom of where I live, a place called Hatchiston, where the parish council said not to build on it because it was a floodplain. The district council ignored that advice and built houses on it. So within 3 months, Peter, of people moving in, those houses were all flooded.
Well, I mean, unsurprising. Sandy, listen, thank you so much for so many points there in regard to housing. It's a big, big issue. Norman's in Dartford and has some thoughts about Starmer. You're very welcome to the programme, Norman. What would you like to say?
I watched the Starmer interview on the BBC this morning. His answers were incoherent. He was tackled about this digital ID and controlling illegal working. And he said, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. She replied, well, it's illegal to employ people like that now. Why would when you have an ID, is that going to make a difference? So he looked at her as though she's talking a foreign language. She said, you have to have an international insurance number. He said, well, this card will be instant. Well, if you say to a bloke, we'll bring your national insurance card in. I mean, these people, I don't believe he knows how the black economy works.
I don't think he knows how a digital ID would work either. I don't think they've thought it out properly. These things develop and change, but essentially he said very, very clearly and directly that you will not be able to work in the UK without one of these, but there'll be loads of people who will be able to work without them. I just don't think it's credible.
Well, it's ridiculous. But and then on this patriotism thing, half an hour ago, anybody who had a Union Jack or a cross at St George was a far-right racist Nazi.
Well, he didn't quite say that. He certainly said that the flag had been abused. He also said that the flag was up in his house, in his flat in Downing Street.
Oh, God. Yeah, all right. Forget all that. He's also said they were all far right who was on that hundreds of thousands on that march, Unite UK march. Ordinary people. I don't think many of them were actual political activists.
Well, there's just a lot of ordinary people wanting to make their voice heard, I think, Norman, and there are 25 arrests, and we know from the breakdown of those arrests that the majority of them were the counter-protesters. Norman, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's Norman in Dartford there. Loads of messages coming in today, including from Jason in Market Harbour. Says, so Nigel Farage is racist for wanting to deport illegal immigrants. On reflection, this would also mean our Prime Minister is calling Donald Trump a racist. How does this affect the UK-USA relationship? This progressive movement is tearing this country apart. Sadly, I think this is too embedded within our institutions. The only way to resolve this will be a revolution, says Jason. Barry says for the reform, suggestion for the reform politician. We're going to talk to him in just a second. I just want to remind ourselves of what Kier Starmer said about Reform UK's immigration policies. I will be putting this to a Reform UK politician, Alex Wilson, in just a second. But let's just remind ourselves what the Prime Minister said on the BBC earlier today.
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote reform or are thinking of voting reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly.
Well, Zia Youssef, who is the head of policy for Reform UK, has said that he says that it is Labour's message to the country is clear: pay hundreds of billions for foreign nationals to live off the state forever, or Labour will call you racist. Reform's plan will ensure only British people can access welfare and that migrants contribute to society. Well, we'll probe this further with Alex Wilson, who's a Reform UK London Assembly member. He'll be with us in just a few minutes here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Jason in the Lake District. Sandy from Suffolk is spot on. It's the same up here with the housing situation. Liam says, people seem confused. The digital ID card has absolutely nothing to do with boat people. It's aimed at the ones who are illegally letting in at the airport on a visa that decide not to go home. Illegal people claiming asylum will be issued with one anyway. This is a smokescreen and people haven't seen it yet. Labour will not stop the boats. Stuart in Perthshire says, I've been thinking about digital ID, Peter, and I think even if it were a great idea, hold on, this is spared. Yes, great idea, and everyone was positive about it, it would still be rejected because the concept is forever tarnished by the name of Tony Blair. I am against it, for the record. Well, thank you to Stuart in Perthshire for that. The Do Not Introduce Digital ID Cards petition has gone up again. 2.2 million people have signed it now. 2,202,064 signatures. Tech Update have looked at that in the last couple of minutes. Right then, we've spoken to the Liberal Democrats, we've spoken to the government, Labour, we've spoken to the Conservatives. Now it's time to speak to Reform, and I'm delighted that Alex Wilson from Reform UK is with me. He's Reform UK London Assembly member. Hi, Alex.
Good afternoon, Peter. Great to be on the show.
Big controversy this morning. Kier Starmer calling your immigration policies racist. Let's remind ourselves what he said on the BBC.
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
And do you think that Reform UK is trying to appeal to racists?
No, I think that there are plenty of people who either vote Reform or are thinking of voting Reform who are frustrated. They had 14 years of failure under the Conservatives. They want us to change things. They may have voted Labour a year ago, and they want the change to come more quickly.
Is your immigration policy racist and immoral, Alex?
Absolutely not. And I think what Sir Kier Starmer's interview this morning has shown is that the Labour Party, the Labour government, are now so desperate, so terrified, and so completely run out of ideas that all they can resort to is name-calling. And whether it's calling us racist, whether it's calling us far-right, whether it's calling us enemies of the country, that kind of language is really very dangerous indeed. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw what happened in America when Charlie Kirk was brutally assassinated. You know, language, words have consequences, and it's an absolute disgrace that the Labour Party, whether it's Kier Starmer in Westminster, or I guess in Liverpool today, or whether it's Sadiq Khan in London in the Assembly, using this kind of language to demonise their opponents because they can't tackle us on the arguments. They know that they failed. Conservatives failed before them. There's plenty in politics to argue about the principle of policy and whether things are working, whether things are a good idea or not, without having to resort to this kind of language. And it's extremely dangerous, and I really wish they wouldn't do it.
He's called your policy racist, though. He says people who vote for... He hasn't called people who vote for Reform UK racist. There is a distinction there, isn't there?
Okay, this morning he did, yes, but he's previously called us enemies of the country, and that's that's very inflammatory language indeed. And I think if something untoward was to happen to one of our senior elected officials, then he would have some responsibility to bear for that. But no, the policy itself is absolutely sound. We're in this position because both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, with all their collective years of experience in government, have failed to tackle illegal migration. They've allowed legal migration to balloon out of control as well. And that's why we're having to come up with big, bold, radical policies to address that, because the country is crying out for something different. We're hitting over 30% in every opinion poll. We've led 127 consecutive opinion polls now. There's a reason for that. It's because the country is fed up with what's gone on before, and they want change, and they want that change to be delivered by Reform UK.
Can I ask you about a big controversy in the last few days? This is Reform UK's former leader in Wales, who has pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey to 8 bribery charges while an elected member of the European Parliament. This is Nathan Gill, who was elected member of the European Parliament for Wales, who agreed to receive financial advantage, namely money, which constituted improper performance for the holder of an elected office. This was, he had made statements and opinion pieces, given opinion pieces to news outlets, 112 Ukraine, which are supportive of a particular narrative that would benefit Russia regarding events in Ukraine. We've got a frontline politician, no longer in your party, who's pleaded guilty to this, who has been shilling for Russia.
Yeah, it's an absolute disgrace. And you're right to point out he's no longer a member of our party, hasn't been a member of our party for quite a few years since this first came to light. I mean, he was an MEP. We left the European Union and haven't had MEPs at all since, well, quite a few years ago now. And yes, he was leader of the party in Wales at the time of the Welsh Senedd elections in 2021, but he's not been involved since then at all. He's not a member of the party now. He'll never be a member of the party again. What he's done is unforgivable, and he's nothing to do with us, and say won't ever be anything to do with us ever again.
Are you now, given Reform is growing, given there are many, many more candidates, given that if the polls are to be believed, the local council election, just like the last one in May, will be a very successful one to you, are you convinced that Reform UK have it right in terms of the people they are selecting? You've had a few problems with James McMurdoch as well. He's no longer a member of your party. Are you confident that things are going in the right direction in terms of the selection of people, especially when your party is doing so well in the polls?
Yeah, it's a really important question to ask, and we have to be upfront about where we've got it wrong in the past. At the last general election, it was a very different kind of context, where we were trying to fill seats at short notice. The election was called when, let's face it, none of the main parties was really ready for it. We are now in a much stronger position. We have so many more members to choose from, a lot more high-quality applicants that are going forwards, and a much more stringent vetting regime. Now, if one or two still slip through the net, we'll hold our hands up, we'll dismiss them, we'll deal with it, because it's important that people can have trust in the candidates that we're putting forward. But I'm confident that the systems we have in place now are much stronger, are much more robust, and the people that are applying and coming forwards, and the people that I'm meeting at branch meetings that I go to every week, and the councillors that are getting elected in council by-elections every week, all these people are much, much better people than we've ever had before. And that's what's so exciting about being involved in a party that is on the march, that is growing. That we're gaining seats every week near enough in council by-elections. We're, as I said, we've led in 127 consecutive opinion polls. We had those fantastic local elections in May, and we're building for what happens next. We've got the Scottish Parliament, the Senedd, council elections next year. But the biggest problem I think we have to be aware of right now is complacency. We've got ourselves in this great position, but we absolutely have to keep working, keep fighting to get us to that next level and take those next steps forwards. But that's what we're all absolutely 100% committed to do, with good quality people behind us.
Can I just ask you before you go, Alex, about the controversy in regard to Pete North? No doubt you've seen this on social media, someone who retweeted a meme in regard to Islam, in regard to pro-Palestinian supporters. We have today the Community Secretary, Steve Reid. I spoke to him a bit earlier on. He says he's prepared to overrule advice from a group working on the official definition of anti-Muslim prejudice. I just wonder, from your position and from Reform UK's position, where free speech ends and where actual racism and incitement begins, because certainly we've had Pete North arrested. I don't think he should have been arrested, and he's been arrested for a retweet. What do you make of that controversy?
Yeah, it's crazy. And the government say that there's no such thing as two-tier policing, two-tier justice. Well, I think we've seen yet again with this particular retweet that it is. I mean, it's some fairly coarse language, but I don't think it's incitement. I don't think it's outright racism, and it certainly doesn't justify being arrested in the middle of the night, taken the other side of the county, locked up for a few hours. For words on Twitter that I say are not directly inciting either hatred or violence. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. There are thousands of people arrested every year for this kind of thing, and hopefully this example has contributed to blowing the lid off it again, so people are more aware of it happening, because the more people are aware this is happening, the more people can stand up and say, we want this to stop. We've got digital ID, we've got the Online Safety Act, all these encroachments onto our liberty, and this government is running away with overreach of the state power. We've got to stop it. We're the only party that will genuinely stop this happening.
Alex, thank you. That's Alex Wilson there, who is a London Assembly member for Reform UK. Let's hear from you. JB has been in touch with a voice note.
Why don't the French government, as soon as they land on their soil, give them an ID card which can be digitally transferred to our country for those that are coming in, not for the people that have lived their entire lives here? I think it's absolutely ridiculous, this ID card scheme, and I would imagine that when it comes in the day after, there's going to be a lot of the population who won't be going to work.
Thank you. And another person has been in touch on digital ID. Loads of people want to talk about it today. Let's hear another voice note.
Morning, Peter. Travelling Boz here. The ID cards. It's the same people who are already listed that will be filling in these forms to get an ID card. Already got our passports, already got our driving licence, our medical records. And it'll be the same people who won't be handing in their details, who get away with everything as they do now. It's just, immigration can be stopped quite easily, and this is not the way to do it. Partial government don't know what they're doing. Get them out.
And let's hear from Martin as well. I think Martin's view is about Kier Starmer and his comments about Reform's immigration policy earlier today.
Morning, Peter. Martin from Worcestershire. Getting completely confused with this Starmer character calling Reform racist for wanting to make British people first. Surely that's not racist. Surely that's nationalistic, because Britain is full of many races. If they got the language right, perhaps we might listen. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Barry has been in touch and says, Nigel Farage says should he become Prime Minister, he will not ban halal and kosher slaughter. It's a barbaric practice and has no place in the UK. It is a vote loser. It is barbaric and horrendous and shouldn't happen. Brad in Cambridge says, overdevelopment of the beautiful areas around little villages of South Cambridgeshire is completely destroying the environment and culture. The country is losing its nature due to overcrowding. It isn't racist or xenophobic to want to maintain our own culture. Thank you to Ian in Cheshire, who says there's one thing Starmer can be proud of. He's made us all political activists. Andy in Thatcham says Starmer needs builders and tradesmen, yet he has spent the last 14 months calling them all far right. Elsie says, are the IDs going to be made of plastic? Starmer referred to people as plastic patriots. That was after a Unite the Kingdom march. I don't think all tradies are right-wing, by the way, by any stretch of the imagination. There was an electrician who came into my house and we had a very spirited debate about the Middle East, and I think he's very much on the left to the extent that he didn't come back to finish the work. So I think he sort of made up his mind on my opinion. Anyway, Pete says... Oh, Pete and Cheryl, yes, met you yesterday, yes. Hello, Peter, met you on Saturday. Good man, outside talkTV. Pete and Cheryl here. Keep up the good work and common sense. Pete and Cheryl, thank you very much indeed. Yes, they asked for a photograph, which was very, very nice, and it was Cheryl's birthday. I can think of no better present for Cheryl's birthday than... No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to talk about my book, Political Animals, which is now out, because Ofcom will be very annoyed with me. Lots more to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Get your call in, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
When I was a young lad, mate, I was going through hell, and the only thing we had that you got me through, and I mean this, you and Tommy, got me through the most difficult, horrific times of my life. Looking forward to you guys that made me laugh. You made me the person I am today. I was going through a lot at home. I was in and out of children's homes for certain stuff with family. And you, and waiting with my mum for you pair to come on, you saved me. And you pair saved me, literally.
Thank you very much.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Steve Reid, who we spoke to earlier, the Housing Secretary, he is on the stage at Labour Party conference in Liverpool. We're going to have full coverage, of course, right throughout the week here on Talk. Let's hear a little bit about what he's saying.
That is why this government will permanently shift power out of Whitehall into every region, town, village and community in this country. And it will help to restore those battered high streets.
Well, that's something to look forward to, isn't it? The high streets are going to be solved. Every government ever has said that forever. So there we are. We'll see what Steve Reid does there. He's the Housing Secretary, Communities and Local Government, the department I used to work in. Lots of people very annoyed about digital IDs. Lawrence is one of them. He's in Swansea. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Lawrence, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good day, Andrew. I was just thinking.
Are you there, Lawrence? You there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I was just saying that in regards to this digital ID, if you leave an employer, you have a P45, which initiates your employment status. So when you go to a new employer, you have to present that P45 in regards to your validation to be employed. I just don't get this. I just don't get it.
What the point of it is?
Pardon?
You don't get what the point of it is. I don't think I do either, Lawrence.
Yeah, well, the P45 is your contract of employment.
Yeah.
And your dismissal or your potential or leaving of that employer to gain employment to your next employer, you have to present that P45, which initiates all your national contributions, your tax, your national insurance number, and all these things. So it just makes no sense to me.
Thanks for your thoughts, Lawrence. I think a lot of people are similarly baffled. Let's hear from Tony on a voice note.
Good morning, Peter. Tony from North Somerset. Great show as usual on a Sunday morning. Yeah, I've been watching the clips of Starmer, Steve Reid, and some of the other front bench ministers for the Labour Party at this conference. Straight away, you can tell the demeanour between the two conferences that I've watched, actually three, including Lib Dems and Reform, there was more togetherness in the Reform conference. It was more light-hearted. There wasn't so much doom and gloom. There was ways of pushing forward. And if Kier Starmer's come out with a statement saying he does not fear reform in any way and he's confident he can turn this around, let's see how confident he is by calling a general election and see if he can get rid of the reform threat once and for all, if he's that confident. Personally, I don't think he will.
Very good points there, Tony. Bridget's been in touch too.
Good morning, Peter. Great show. Another car crash interview by Steve Reid. No answers, no clue, same old, same old. Well, I can tell you, Peter, that I live in France. I have done for 18 years. They have digital ID cards here, and it does nothing to curb migration. I mean, they've got massive problems as well here. Anyway, great show, Peter.
Thank you, Bridget. Ian's been in touch too on Christine Jardine.
Hi, Peter. It's Ian from Grinstead. What a fantastic line of questioning to Jardine about can a woman have a penis. I've never seen someone dance around the subject without giving a categorical yes or no. What is wrong with these politicians? Just come out and say it, for God's sake, instead of covering your arse in every single manner you can. They're pathetic, I'm sorry to say. They are just so substandard.
Thank you. Thanks also to Scott and Surrey, who's sent a very nice message, which I won't read out because my head will explode, about me having my Weetabix this morning, but I appreciate that. Alan in Reading says, what is Steve Reid talking about? The only people penalised will be Brits. The black market and migrant economy will thrive more than ever. And Shane says, if digital ID is the one thing to stop illegal immigrants working, can you please ask Steve, then why in France and Germany, where they have this system, they haven't stopped working illegally or reduced illegal migrants? Let's hear Karen on a voice note now, if we could hear Karen on a voice note.
Peter, Martin Hove here. Just want to make a couple of points on the digital ID. Now, the current Labour government and cabinet have got 0 MPs with business acumen. They've got no knowledge or no experience of running or working in a business. So the idea that they're going to roll out a complex app is for the birds. They're not going to be able to do it, first of all. Second of all, the previous government couldn't even roll out a COVID app that had a working GPS tracker. One of the easiest things to do when you build an app. So, and also, do they take the public for complete mugs? As if me, as a business owner in the private sector that got a passport and a driving licence, me also having a digital ID is going to stop thousands of Somalian and Eritrean men coming over for a total free life of benefits. It's crazy.
Thank you for that. Let's hear Karen now.
Digital ID is not going to stop people working because they work now with national insurance numbers. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why doesn't this government go around shutting all the nail bars that take cash, all the kebab shops that take cash, all the Turkish barbers that take cash? Digital ID is not going to stop this at all, because this is another way for them to bring in the CBDC, the central digital bank currency, which we won't have either, because we won't want that either. They're not going to enslave us. We've had enough.
Thank you. Let's get a final call just before we go to the news from William in Glasgow. William, you've got about a minute to make your point. What would you like to say?
Okay, Peter. I was listening about Tom, the Jewish fella.
Yes, horrendous story, isn't it, William?
Yeah, I was recently on holiday, Peter, and I met 4 young lads, Israeli lads. 2 were 18, 2 were 17. I've never met such well-mannered, polite boys, and if that's the adults they're going to be, well, I'd rather have a neighbour like that as anybody else that we seem to welcome into this country, right, left and centre. Absolutely lovely lads.
I know what you mean, William, and it's just, I don't understand people who just hate people simply because of their religion or because they're Jewish, for example. It's horrendous.
Thanks, Peter. That's all I'd like to say.
That's all you want to say? Okay.
I'm 71, Peter.
Yep.
I'm never having an ID digital card. Never.
Okay.
So does that mean they're maybe going to stop my old age pension or stop me going to a hospital? I don't know.
I'd like to see them try, William. I don't think they get too far. I appreciate your thoughts. That's William in Glasgow there. I tell you what, Ursula's on the line. We literally have about 30 seconds, Ursula. If you can make your point really briefly, I'll get you in.
Hi, Peter. Yeah, just a quick one, really. I saw the car crash interview with Steve Reed on television earlier this morning, but on another channel. He didn't know many houses had been built when he was asked. And funnily enough, when I heard your interview with him, he was able to tell you because the previous person interviewing him had told him.
Yeah.
And it just concerns me. These MPs are not on top of their brief.
Well, when you're the housing secretary, you'd like to think you knew how many homes were being built. The answer is probably